watching closely.
What's the secret, Max?
You just gotta find something you love to do and then do it for the rest of your life.
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Hello, and welcome to The Establishing Shot, a podcast where we do deep dives into directors and their filmographies. I am your host, Eli Price, and we are here on episode 82 of the podcast, getting into our Steven Spielberg series even further, covering his next science fiction movie, Minority Report. Had covered AI a couple weeks ago and following it up with Minority Report. I think it's our first back-to-back sci-fi Spielberg. So yeah, pretty exciting for me because I love a good sci-fi movie. But
Yeah.
I have a returning guest with us today is Andrew Fossier. Welcome back, Andrew.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
What a great, like you said, back-to-back sci-fi movies is always fun.
Yes, it really is. And really too, we had the AI movie draft that came out last week, which, we peek behind the curtain. I record these way in advance, so Andrew hasn't had the privilege of listening to that or seeing what the picks are. But but yeah, we have an exciting movie draft next week. We're going to be doing Tom Cruise performances. So yeah, so 2 fun science fiction movies and then 2 fun movie drafts too. So we're on a good roll here to start off the new year. Right now we're still in the old year.
Yeah,
as we're recording.
As you were saying that, I was like, Eli, it's November. Don't rush it. But oh wait, we're not.
Yes, we're speaking into the future here.
How appropriate.
Yeah. It's it's appropriate for, we're not speaking all the way to 2054. So
and we're also not planning to commit a crime, so maybe it's not as appropriate.
Yeah, there's no red balls with our names on them, hopefully, rolling down the line in 2054 into the hands of John Anderton. But but yeah, Andrew has been on a few episodes in the past. He's I'm trying to remember what the first one you came on for. Was it in the Nolan series?
I want to say it was Nolan.
Yeah. And you were on for the early Spielberg stuff too, but I can't remember what you came on for.
So Nolan was Tenet.
Yes.
Early
Tenet.
Spielberg was, I can't think of the name right now. The Train, Soul Train. No, not Soul Train. What's the name?
Soul Train. What movie are we talking about here?
There's something to do with a train, and then when the guy went back in time because he was a jerk, and he got sent to the Nazis. That's all I remember about that.
The Twilight Zone.
Yes, the Twilight Zone. Thank you, Eli.
I was like, what movie are you
My movie synopsis skills are not very good on the spot.
Honestly, it's a very forgettable movie. So I just it wasn't even registering as a movie that I covered. No offense to you. It was a great discussion with you.
Yes, that was a lot of fun.
You were on the Christmas movie draft too.
Yes,
that was
as well.
One. Yeah.
I managed to get. I guess I didn't for the Twilight Zone ones, but I managed to get an MCU film on both of the previous drafts.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work this time because Tom Cruise is not yet.
Not yet. At this point, I don't have much hope for that. But yeah, for a Tom Cruise, but I would have, if you would have made me bet big money, I would have bet Tom Cruise would be in the MCU before Harrison Ford. So
yeah.
But here we are.
Be the best stunt to grace the scene of the MCU if he ever does. So we have that to look forward to.
That's true. He will. I guarantee you this: if he's in an MCU movie, there will not be green screen, a ton of green screen.
Yeah.
But yeah. Remind me, so we're moving through Spielberg. Remind me of your or I know you shared it in the Twilight Zone episode, but remind me of your early experiences with Spielberg. Was he a director that you always kind of was aware of?
Yeah, well, it's hard to say because I only really became more aware of directors and
Sure.
caring about film in a deeper way when I met my wife Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
But he definitely was someone whose movies I was very aware of.
Yeah.
It's impossible really not to be with Jurassic Park and Jaws and those, So I would say relatively familiar, but not of course as deep as the the podcast has gone, right? But I've enjoyed learning more about him, his filmography. But not super familiar with growing up.
Yeah, and that's true. It might not even be I know Spielberg's name, but just watching his movies, I feel is just most people our age and probably even the generation before us are just grew up watching Spielberg movies, even if they didn't know they were Spielberg movies. But yeah, I mean, and I feel every generation has their Spielberg movie, for the generation in general. For our generation, it probably is Jurassic Park is even if it's not our personal favorites, it's our generation in general's favorite.
Yeah.
And then probably Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark is probably either it'd be hard Raiders or E.T. It'd be one of those probably for the generation before us, but probably Raiders.
I don't know how to decipher which would be. Maybe.
Raiders is the one that our parents probably or maybe a little younger than our parents dressed up as kids and stuff.
Yeah.
But, I think my parents were a little bit too old to be dressing up like Indiana Jones when that movie came out, but so maybe kids a little younger than them. But yeah. But yeah, so like I said, we're covering Minority Report today. It is his how many so I said second sci-fi in a row, but I mean so you got Close Encounters was the first one where he dove into the sci-fi world. E.T. is sci-fi adjacent, I guess. It's hardly a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
It's an adventure movie with a cute alien, I guess. But I guess you could, I guess you could say it's it's secondarily a sci-fi movie. So you've got those two. You could say you could probably even say Jurassic Park has some sci-fi elements to it with the bringing the dinosaurs back and all that technology and stuff. So yeah, I mean he's dabbled in it for a long time in the sci-fi realm. And really even the kind of pseudo spiritual stuff with always kind of deals with that, and sci-fi always kind of feels a little pseudo spiritual in a way. There's always some sort of religious theme that goes along with the philosophical questions of, I think it just comes with asking those metaphysical questions about life. It's bound to get spiritual in some way,
Yeah. Well, I was going to say this a second ago when you were talking about Jurassic Park. It's funny because that scene. I mean, everyone knows I'm probably about to say that the scene with Jeff Goldblum talking about the responsibility of science. You didn't stop to ask, should you? You just were worried about if you could. That is such a good, interesting concept in a sci-fi film. I think that's a really good thing to explore, and that movie does a really good job of it.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you consider Ready Player One is sci-fi or
I don't know. I saw that when it came out in theaters and I haven't seen it since. So let's see what Letterboxd says under genre. It does. It has science fiction under the genre, so yeah, that would be one.
Yeah.
But usually his sci-fi movies are like they're more like fantasy movies with sci-fi trappings usually. And this is, to me, Minority Report feels like his Close Encounters, I guess, would be the closest to being like a full-on sci-fi movie. But I feel like Minority Report feels like his only movie that's like hard sci-fi, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And even it has like elements that you don't usually see in a sci-fi movie, just because he can't get away from that like fantastical kind of like those elements, and then the sentimental elements that are in it kind of stray a little bit from typical like hard sci-fi, I guess. But yeah, this to me really does. It feels like his most sci-fi movie.
Yeah, I definitely could see that argument.
Yeah,
I think that's a good point. It doesn't. I'm kind of fuzzy on genre in general. I don't think I'm great at it, but this is a much different concept than even Ready Player One or AI. Like it's
or Close Encounters. It's very much like. So I mean, I guess we can start at the beginning, where this story began, because that will explain probably why this is so much more sci-fi. It feels more close to like a hard sci-fi movie than anything he's ever made. And that's because it's based on a short story by the sci-fi novelist and writer Philip K. Dick. Dick was born in 1928, and he died at the age of 53, unfortunately, in 1982. And he really he was one of the most original U.S. sci-fi authors. I haven't read much of his stuff, but he had I wrote down 44 novels and over 100 novellas.
Wow,
that
he wrote that many. Yeah,
yes,
it's amazing.
And but he said of himself, I have this quote from him: "I'm not a novelist, I'm a fictional philosopher," which I love. I love that quote.
Yeah.
But he actually died a few weeks before the theatrical release of the first adaptation of his work, which was Blade Runner. Blade Runner was adapted from the novel "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep," which is the only novel I've read by him. And it's a good novel. It's I actually think the movie does a really good job of expanding on his on the novel and in interesting ways. But the book is really good if you've never read it.
Yeah, it is on my list of sci-fi things I want to read.
Yeah.
Three Body Problem is next, but that might get bumped up.
Yeah. I think I read it in 2021 because I think the movie might be set in 2021.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It seems like whatever year the movie's set in, I'm pretty sure I read it in that year. Because I was like, oh, this movie's set this year, I'll read it. But yeah, so that was I guess he probably saw the movie, since it was like the release was like several weeks after he died. I would imagine he had they had showed it to him before, because by the time you're getting a few weeks out from the movie, it's done.
Yeah.
Some
poor sap is sitting there editing up until it releases
until the last minute. So yeah, and surely they wouldn't be like, no, Philip, you can't watch it until it releases to the in wide release. So yeah, I didn't really come across that in my research, but I would imagine he probably did at least get to see that, the first adaptation of his, and Blade Runner's a great one.
Definitely.
Yeah. Spoiler to you, but not to everyone else who hopefully listened to last week's. But I did take it in the AI movie draft. So
nice.
Yeah. And I wasn't even thinking when I took it. It was that I was about to cover a Philip K. Dick story.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so 8 years after that, in 1990, Total Recall releases, which is an adaptation of his novella, We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, which I have not heard. I should have listened to that because I had checked out the audiobook from the library, like the library app, and listened to Minority Report this past week. And this story was like it's like kind of like a collection of novellas. It's like that one's in, and this one's in it too. But
yeah, I wish I had read Minority Report.
Yeah,
to prepare for this, but yeah, I didn't.
It was like the audiobook was like an hour and a half.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so
I feel really bad that I didn't.
And I listened to it at 1.2 speed, so it was even less than that.
Those audiobooks, I usually am at least 1.2, if not like 1.5, unless I want to slow down to catch stuff.
I think I listened to Jurassic Park on 1.6. Because
it really depends on who's doing
it depends
the voice,
on the reader. Yeah,
the reading. Yeah,
the guy that read that was like pretty slow, and so I was able to bump it up to 1.6. So yeah. But yeah, pro tips if you're listening to audiobooks, bump that thing up. Listen faster. But yeah, so Total Recall, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course. A blind spot for me. I've never seen it. I need to see that. It was a big success. Yeah, so me and Andrew both need to see it. We can't speak toward how good Total Recall was, other than that it was a successful movie, kind of objectively. So Gary Goldman, who produced and co-wrote that movie, bought the rights to Minority Report in 1992. And he actually wanted a Minority Report to be a sequel to Total Recall, where the Douglas Quaid hero character from that movie would replace the Anderton character in Minority Report. So I don't really know how that would work. That would take some serious rewriting of story and backstory, but yeah. So he tried to make that work. He ended up commissioning a script to this guy John Cohen, who is an American novelist. If you look at his filmography, it's just Minority Report. So he didn't really do any. I guess he wasn't interested in keeping on trying to do screenwriting, but
go out on top. Just take the win.
Yeah, he did. And then they were actually hoping for Jan de Bont to direct it. He was a pretty renowned DP. He did the cinematography for like Die Hard and Basic Instinct. And he had done 2 movies directed in Speed with Keanu Reeves and Twister. Those were 94 and 96. So he kind of surprised everybody with 2 pretty successful directing movies. So they were gonna hire Jan de Bont, but that did not end up happening. I think Jan de Bont did get executive producer credit or something like that, but yeah, did not direct it, obviously.
Would not be here
because this is not a Jan de Bont series, so I don't foresee doing a Jan de Bont series. But yeah, so John Cohen works on the script. He arranges to send it to Tom Cruise. I don't really know. I didn't ever really hear why. He said he did, but he didn't really say why.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tom had just finished up with Eyes Wide Shut. And yeah, so he sends it to him. I guess Cruise was kind of interested in doing some sci-fi movie, maybe. So he read it and sent it to Spielberg for Spielberg's opinion. And yeah, that's you may be thinking, where does this relationship come in? Because we've been covering Spielberg for a long time, and Tom Cruise has never come up. And when you're in the movie industry, I'm sure you have a lot of friends that you don't make stuff with. So on a podcast like this, of course, we're not going to talk about Tom Cruise and Spielberg's friendship until it actually means something for for the series.
Yeah.
But they had met on the set of Risky Business in 1983, which, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering if Spielberg was a producer um, on Risky Business or something like that, because I can't think of why else he would be on the set other than maybe just visit. Sometimes they do visit, but
Hmm.
yeah, he was not a producer. So yeah, I guess he was just visiting it, the set, which happens. But yeah, they met then. That was 1983. They had talked on and off about like working together through the years. They had nothing ever worked out. I know one project was a potential Curious Case of Benjamin Button project.
Hmm.
That didn't work out. And then in 1988, Spielberg was supposed to direct Rain Man, which of course Tom Cruise starred in with
Yeah.
Dustin Hoffman. But he ended up doing Last Crusade instead. He kind of gave that movie off to who is it that directed? And is it Levinson? Is it Levinson?
I'm
Um,
blanking on that.
yeah, I am too. Barry Levinson. Just pulled it up.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was already on the Tom Cruise letterbox page. Yeah, so Levinson ends up directing that, and he goes off and does Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which good movie. So can't be too mad about that. But yeah, so they had tried to work together, and it just never worked out. But Spielberg gets the script from Cruise, who got it from Cohen, and then Spielberg goes to Cohen and says he basically asked him to rework the script with some. I'm sure he gave him some notes of stuff he would like to see in the script. And yeah, once he did that, he was like, "Okay, Tom Cruise, let's do it." He was interested in being involved. So once Spielberg is like, "Hey, I am interested in making this," it's kind of like, okay, I guess Spielberg's directing this movie.
Yeah.
Because what are you going to say? No, Spielberg, we don't want you to direct our movie. Um,
Can't imagine that.
yeah. But yeah, they originally were shooting for a production in February of 2000 and hopefully releasing it in November. But Cruise was not available because Stanley Kubrick was, of course, behind schedule on shooting of Eyes Wide Shut. And then because of that, the production of Mission Impossible 2 got pushed back. And so he wasn't available for then. So Spielberg goes and does AI. Obviously, when after Kubrick dies, he wants to do AI. Go ahead and do that before jumping back into this. So finally, they get to make the movie together. But jumping back a little bit, Spielberg had reached out to this guy Scott Frank to kind of rework John Cohen's script. So Cohen and Frank are the ones that get kind of co-writing credit for the movie. But yeah, Scott Frank had done some writing with Barry Sonnenfeld for Get Shorty in '95, and then Out of Sight with Steven Soderbergh in '98. Haven't seen either of those, but I know Out of Sight is supposed to be really great. And he also did some rewriting for the script of Saving Private Ryan.
Oh wow.
So Spielberg was familiar with him from that, and I guess wanted him to rework this script with some ideas, which Spielberg, what I read was Spielberg was not short on ideas for this movie, of course. And so that was in '98. He was working on this script for like 2 years. And Spielberg would like have flashes of inspiration and send them off to Scott Frank, and he would have to like try to work that into the script and stuff. So, yeah. And in the middle of that, this was really interesting to me. Spielberg hired 15 specialists from various fields to brainstorm the design of the future So they went for a weekend to this hotel in Venice, Los Angeles, and I mean, he had like an architect, a writer and journalist, biomechanic researcher, computer engineering guys. He had like the whole gamut of, I guess, like industries, like,
Yeah.
and so they just basically sat around and evaluated the credibility of the kind of design for this 2054 world. And so a lot of the stuff you see in the movie kind of came out of that. They produced this 80-page report that the production designer Alex McDowell ended up using. Him and his design team kind of called it the 2054 Bible. So whenever they were designing, they kind of went off of all of that stuff.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to see if that is like publicly available to
Yeah, I
just to
don't
see
know.
the things that they thought about. That sounds like it'd be really interesting to look through.
Yeah, I don't really know. Like in the special features, which we'll in just a bit talk about, all the gizmos and gadgets and stuff that are in the
Yeah.
movie. But all of the McDowell made it sound like all of that stuff came out of ideas from that little brainstorming think tank. So yeah, really,
Yeah.
Spielberg. And Spielberg, after you cover him for a while, you realize he really loves to sit down with a group of people and just like brainstorm all the ideas. And yeah, which is smart because if it's done well, then you brainstorm a ton of ideas, and then the ones that are good end up sticking, and the ones that aren't good just kind of like fall off. But yeah. He really kind of made this movie, we talked about making it coming off of AI. AI is a much more like, feels more like fantasy. It's coded with the Pinocchio story.
Yeah.
So it feels more fantasy, poetic, and this has much more like logic and realism to it. Although I would argue the aesthetics are a little bit like fantastical sometimes.
Yeah, I don't know when we were gonna. I saw that in the notes, but the color grading choice confused and kind of frustrated me a little bit.
Yeah.
Especially to me, the thing that would have made me appreciate it a little more is if maybe when he was, I don't know, visiting his wife in the farm or something, if we'd have had like a normal. But everything in this movie was so white.
Yes.
Like, everything was overwhelmingly white.
White and blue.
Yeah, that was a weird choice for me. I understand it in the sense of like the city and the futurism trying to get you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense in the natural sense.
Yeah.
Out away from the city and the farm.
Yeah. And we'll definitely touch on that pretty soon.
Yeah, okay.
And a little bit deeper because I have thoughts on it too. But yeah, I mean, he's really, Frank is diving into this. They do move quite a bit away from the novella. So you have the basic framework from the novella, but obviously, like I said, like the audiobook is an hour and a half long, so it's not a ton of meat on the characters and all that. So. For instance, in the novella, the precogs are, they're not like very humanized in the novella. It makes it seem like they are human, but they're kind of like, it makes them seem more like mutants of some sort. And so they definitely humanize them a ton more from what the novella story has. And then also in the novella, it seems like they can predict all crimes, basically. And in this one, they limit it to just murder, which I think is a smart choice just for like having less that you have to worry about.
Yeah.
They did explain it away, I think, in a, it's one of those like exposition, like why only murder? well, because murder is so like intense and ripping space time,
yeah,
and you're like, makes sense. I'll roll with
yeah,
that.
plausible.
Yeah. um, yeah. And so the other big thing is Anderton in the novella story is like a balding 50 something. So he's kind of like,
Uh-huh.
it's kind of like a point in his life where he would feel more threatened by a younger guy coming in, and
Yeah,
that, which is kind of the feeling you get in the novella, whereas here he's kind of like an athletic 30s guy still in kind of his prime. I mean, it's Tom Cruise, so obviously
yeah,
the character's going to be in his prime,
yeah,
uh, but yeah, the choice makes sense. I mean, you're building the movie around Tom Cruise, so you can't write him as a balding 50-year-old,
yeah. And
Um,
I didn't feel like it was. I didn't. I feel like the conflict still was
it
created
did.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't need to add to me. I didn't feel like that lost anything.
Yeah.
Did so. I saw something about the first script of this, his name actually being Anderson,
Oh, really?
and I am 99% sure that Agatha calls him Anderson at some point, because
Hmm.
I remember during watching, I'm like, I thought his name was Anderton. Like it was
Yeah.
so that was weird. That was strange.
Yeah, that is weird. Because in the
Yeah.
novella, it's Anderton, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why they would change it to son. It's like
Maybe just because
it's
everyone
more
thought
common,
it
but
was. Yeah.
I mean,
But I'm pretty sure
yeah,
there's a slip up in the film, and I could be wrong, but it definitely sounded like Anderson.
yeah, it could be. I didn't catch that, but it's definitely possible. Um, yeah, the other thing is they added a new kind of bad guy in Lamar Burgess.
Mhm.
I think Cohen's original script had kind of tried to work Whitwer in as the bad guy. And I like him kind of as a threat, but not like the antagonist,
Yeah.
which he ends up, you know, it's like, I think it does make the scene where Burgess kills him like just that much more like, because you're like, ooh, he's gonna be on Anderton's side now, and then he's just like, do you hear
Nope.
anything? Nope, no spiders. Boom, like it's like, oh, junk. Like he just took him out. I was getting excited that Whitwer was gonna like join forces with
Yeah.
Anderton, and then he's gone. Um, yeah, I think that was really well done. So in the novella, there is another like higher up guy that is the bad guy. But actually in I don't know if I should spoil the novella for everyone. But
I
like
don't know.
at one point
Your call.
he thinks it's like his wife that is against
Oh.
him. His wife is like, it seems like I can't remember exactly how it works out in the Dick story, but his wife seems like she works in pre-crime as well.
Oh.
And so she's kind of like all up in the mix. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like an army guy or something that is the bad guy in the novella.
Mm.
Yeah, and it just kind of, I can't remember how I, it's only been like a few days since I listened to it, and I already can't remember exactly how they wrap up the story, but it was kind of, we'll definitely get to the ending here, but
Uh-huh.
they both are like not fully satisfying endings to a certain degree. But yeah, one of the big influences on this was The French Connection from '71. It's Gene Hackman is the star of that. He's kind of like really like the main thing they took from it was like the protagonist with some like dark problems of his own that he's dealing with, and he's like a detective. Have you ever seen The French Connection?
I have not.
It's a really good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good. Gene Hackman performance. Directed by William Friedkin. And yeah, Friedkin actually like gave Scott Frank some advice when he was writing it. He told him not to feel trapped by the future when writing. And then Spielberg, building off that, was telling him like, hey, when you're writing, just describe what happens. Like if he's going to make a phone call, just write that he makes a phone call. If he's getting in a car, just say he gets in a car. Don't like overwhelm yourself with like future-y talk and stuff.
I heard that too. I feel like that's a good principle.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of times the tech kind of gets in the way of what's going on when it really can be a very simple story with tech added in after the fact. And to me, the thing that is interesting, well, I guess we can talk about this a little more later too, but it feels kind of Dune-ish in that sense, where all of I'm so glad that this movie isn't the AI is just predicting the future. It makes it so much more natural is a weird word, but
spiritual.
Yeah,
in a way.
It's not a computer doing it. It's a human with abilities that we don't understand fully.
Yeah.
It's in that way it's less it's still really sci-fi. I'm not saying it's less sci-fi, but it's less the classical thing, at least in modern storytelling, where it's the AI that's taking over the world that has the nuclear codes. It's more interesting in this sense. Yeah,
it is. And it's very humanizing for these, because they're basically like drug enhanced, like they're basically like drug babies with like enhanced cognitive abilities.
Yeah.
Like, that is what they are, the precogs in this movie. So yeah, it definitely makes it definitely, like, not getting bogged down in all the future-y stuff, I think really helps the script, and like you said, is a good like writing advice. I'm not a screenwriter, but and I've never really tried my hand at it. But it seems like that would be really good advice, because covering all these movies, it feels like if you get a good production designer, they can bring to life like that's like their job. That's the production designer's job, to like bring the world to life, put it in its setting. The writer can only do if the writer is focusing more on like the story and the plot and the and the atmosphere and all of that, then it feels like everything else will kind of follow.
The character being the first. The characters, and that's why adding, I know you can probably make AI a character, but even adding in the idea of the movie doesn't have to make a statement about it being, I'm too focused on this not being AI now. I'm making arguments for that's a good thing. The human aspect of the agents, the loss of agency of the precogs, like it was creepy to me. The guy that's like taking care of them and like,
he's a total creep.
It just was so
Willie,
brushing their teeth. I can't remember his name.
I think it's Willie. We'll cover it for sure in a second when we get to the cast.
Sorry, I keep moving forward.
No, you're good. I'm just trying to remember what his name was, but I'm just like, I'll get to it in a second. The only other thing that's like that I think is good to point out that's different is the Dick story is set in New York City, and Spielberg goes with Washington D.C. and he kind of named two reasons for that decision. One would be the aesthetics. So you have these like beautiful, iconic monuments that he feels like 50 years down the line are still going to be there. So the White House, the Washington Monument, all these things that we recognize are still going to be there and recognizable in 50 years. And so that's one thing. And then the symbolism of it all, which is just like there's this big political decision coming down the line, and that's where all big political decisions are sent to be decided on. So just kind of, he just felt like it would be the perfect place to kind of set the movie instead of New York.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a good decision.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that until I saw that in the notes. That I feel like that fit perfectly. And also if there were and ethically questionable technology advance agency of the government, I feel like it would start in DC, like it wouldn't be New York.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so one of the other things that Spielberg was kind of inspired by was kind of John Huston movies or like old film noir movies. And that would make more sense for New York City over the DC.
Yeah.
But it's not like he's just doing a noir. He's doing his own thing with noir influences. So, but yeah, there's definitely like some John Huston, like he mentioned, The Maltese Falcon and Key Largo and movies like that were kind of an inspiration in kind of the feel and the story to a certain degree, where it's basically a detective that has to figure out who's setting him up, which happens a lot in film noir movies. Backstabbing and double crossing and a bunch of kind of one of the things he talks about is he wanted all the side characters to have like a real punch to them, because the old film noir movies would have these side characters that kind of like move the plot along, and he wanted those characters to be memorable. So he's got that there. But there's definitely a few nods to Hitchcock as well. So for instance, the assembly line thing was apparently an old Hitchcock idea where he wanted that he never did. He had talked about doing this scene where there were these two guys talking as a car was going down an assembly line being made. And then when they get to the end of the assembly line, they open the door to the car and a dead body falls out.
Oh.
Yeah. So not exactly the same, but it's definitely like homage where, Cruise ends up in the car being made and drives off in it, at the end of the assembly line.
Yeah, straight off production line. That was it's funny.
Lexus, Lexus made just for John Anderton. Which the special features had like where you could watch like the full Lexus ad that they made, which is really funny. It's funny to see like what they were like. What would a Lexus ad in 2054 look like? And it's like, it looks like a cologne ad today, kind of.
And also the dystopian. Well, that's one of the funny things. The tech that the movie, we're going to talk about tech later, but the tech that the movie kind of predicted, and one of the things that had gotten spot on was ads, and they're not on the walls, but they're just on our phone or
on our phone.
Anything we're not blocking or paying to block.
Yeah, they're
not quite that personalized.
In our Facebook and Instagram feeds for sure.
Yeah, they're not quite as personalized as calling out your name in a crowded room, but
they're not, and they are. Like my wife was like, well, every time I open the Target app, it's like, hi, Robin, here's the things that you bought last. Would you like to buy them again? And like, I mean, it's not speaking to her, but it's in text.
Yeah, that's true.
And
if you have a, ALEXA that always tries to, just saying that so I don't trigger anyone's smart assistant, that not to go on a whole tangent, but that's the least usable one, because it always is trying to sell me something. And I just saw something about a car that has that built in. Ugh. And it's like, if I was having any one built in, which I don't think I would not want Amazon's.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to dig into all that. We're going to dig into the ads for sure. Like once we get through all the production stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's really, I think that'll be fun to talk about. I did want to mention another homage to Hitchcock that I had seen somewhere. Someone pointed out was that Strangers on a Train, the character Miriam, her murder is filmed in the reflection of some glasses.
Oh.
And in this one, that opening kind of sequence with the Marx murder there's a shot through the lens of his like quote unquote forgotten glasses onto like the victims, which is like definitely, I don't know if it's direct homage, but it kind of, this person was like, oh, this feels like maybe homage to that. And I was like, yeah, maybe so. More homage. It's hard to not accidentally do homage to Hitchcock though. And when you're doing intense scenes,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I did note this too, as we're kind of wrapping up our pre-production talk. The Tom Rothman, who was the chairman of 20th Century Fox, who produced this movie, was very uninterested in all the philosophy stuff that we've been talking about, and he was interested in how they're marketing it because it's Cruise and Spielberg. He's like, what else do we need? And at the time, it's a very appropriate thinking because at the time Spielberg in just the US alone had amassed $3 billion with his movie, and Tom Cruise $2 billion with his movies. So, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then Cruise, kind of following a similar pattern to Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan, he had agreed to no salary, but instead a share of the proceeds. So him and Spielberg both agreed to 15% of the so that's like 30% of the proceeds go into Spielberg and Tom Cruise.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where like if you really believe in your movie that you're making, you like, I would rather have the proceeds than a salary,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, that helps with keeping the production costs down too.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
Which reminds me, whenever we talk later about how much it made, I need to do a quick Google of what the budget was because I forgot to do that earlier. But
I think I actually remember the number.
Well, yeah. I'll default to you.
Okay.
Yeah, just run through the crew real quick before we get into the cast and the production and all that. So this is the first one in a while that Spielberg wasn't a producer of his own movie. So Gerald R. Mullen has produced Spielberg movies in the past. But then, yeah, Bonnie Curtis, Walter F. Parks, and Jan de Bont. There's Jan. Yeah, they all were producers on this. Of course, based on the Philip K. Dick novella. That was in, I don't think I mentioned this, that was 1956 that was written.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this just shows how good of a writer he was, that like something written in 56. And, the technology isn't the same. Like he has like this machine that's like spitting out cards. They're not like in some chamber that's like reading their brain and giving like actual seeable visions or anything. They just like spit out. There's this machine that they like speak into, or they're like babblings is what it says. And
it deciphers or something?
Yeah, it deciphers it or something and spits out these cards that like explain in text what they need to know. So, it's not like in 1956 he was like envisioning what we see in the movie, but the concept is like, wow, like he is really like reaching there in 19. I mean, he's really setting his movie, like, I mean, his story 100 years in the future, basically. 2054. So, yeah, I think it's like really incredible that he wrote that story in 1956.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to find a date on like the MK Ultra, like not when it happened, but when that became something that people knew about. Because it's funny, as soon as the like plot of the movie, because I've watched this before, but as re-seeing this now, when the plot became, it's the drug, the children of people that were on a certain drug have these abilities, but only some survived. Of course, immediately went to MK Ultra, but if this was written, I don't know, I can't find the exact date of like when the public knowledge of that happened, but I know the general dates. of MK Ultra was in like the 50s, but
I don't really know much about that. Is that a drug that you're talking
so
about?
that's the MK Ultra stuff's the CIA's
Oh, okay.
testing
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
trying to figure out. I may be misspeaking and saying, and specifically MK. I know MK Ultra was like telepathy or mind reading, but
Yes.
there
Okay.
were
Okay.
all that
Yeah.
creepy, trying to figure out if people could
Yeah.
do telekinesis and stuff.
Yeah. What comes to mind when you say that is the show Fringe. I don't know if you ever watched that, but
No, I haven't.
I loved that show. But
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time, so I don't know if it holds up, but I did love that show back in the day. Yeah, I mean, really incredible. I mean, I just basically what I'm saying is I need to go read some more Philip K. Dick stories because
Oh yeah, definitely.
yeah, I think Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep was great. This one was good, so I just need to go find some more. Yeah, we've talked about screenplay, John Cohen and Scott Frank. Some camera operators on this one, Mitch Dubin and Gregory Lunsgaard, along with some assistant directors, Sergio Mimica Gazan, who's worked with Spielberg several times before, doing some assistant directing, and Robert Roy. Oh yeah, I noted Sergio's been working with him since The Lost World, so on and off. So, and then of course he has his three like tried and true guys. His director of photography in Janusz Kaminski, who joined him for the first time for Schindler's List, and Michael Kahn and John Williams as his editor and composer. I mean, those are just his guys.
Yeah.
Chances are, if you see a Spielberg movie, it was edited by Michael Kahn and John Williams did the music for it. So,
and what results too?
Yes, absolutely. Some more returning guys for sound. Ron Judkins and Gary Rydstrom have just like been going strong with Spielberg for a while now. And usually it's like those two, and then there'll be like another guy. This time it's Andy Nelson, and there's always like another sound guy thrown in the mix. This is his first work with Alex McDowell, who did the production design. He had done work on The Crow from '94. He had done Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in '98, which I haven't seen. But Fight Club in '99 was done by McDowell. So he's done some good work up to this point. But actually, one of the reasons Spielberg hired him was because he had seen some of his like potential designs for a project with Mel Gibson that never happened, where they were going to be doing some sort of Fahrenheit 51 adaptation.
Yeah, wow, that would have been release the cut.
Yeah, with Mel Gibson of all people. Been interesting. But yeah, so that Alex Mcdowell, I think he did great with the design on this one. But
oh, definitely.
Yeah. And then Anne, I don't really know how to say her last name. Kuljian. That's probably it. Anne Kuljian. She was the set decorator, and she had a lot of like good stuff when I was looking at her filmography. Paris, Texas in '84, which I love. The Abyss in '89, Basic Instinct in '92, Bicentennial Man in '99. She had just come off of Remember the Titans in 2000. Wow. So yeah, definitely some like different stuff, but she had some sci-fi experience, so that definitely helps. And then she does some more work with Spielberg in the future too. Costumes done by Deborah Scott, who had won the Oscar for Titanic. And I think she had done some work on The Twilight Zone for costuming too, because that's in her filmography. VFX, Scott Farrar, Mark Russell, and Michael Lantieri. Farrar worked with him on AI as well, and Lantieri's been with him since Jurassic Park. So, yeah, and then casting, he has Denise Chamian, who also did Saving Private Ryan with him. So yeah, that's really the crew. There's other guys. There's a ton of stunt people, obviously. And but yeah, let's jump into the cast because this is
Yeah.
where it gets interesting. Tom Cruise, of course, plays John Anderton. Tom talked about like how he always had remembered being scared by like the dead body popping out of the boat in Jaws and seeing E.T. with his family. So he had always wanted to work with Spielberg. And yeah, Spielberg was just talking about how on set Tom Cruise was just like always wanting more ideas. He was even saying at one point like if there would be a few days go by where they were just like doing their normal work and hadn't had any new ideas, Tom would be like, "Okay, let's get some new ideas." like I guess you just like get bored and be like, "All right, let's get something new to work with." Yeah, I mean Tom. I mean it's Tom Cruise. We'll talk more about him obviously because he's the star of the movie. But yeah, I mean he just does a bunch of Tom Cruise stuff really.
Yeah.
If we're being honest. There's not much. There's not much to say about him in this movie. It's not a movie that makes him. He's already Tom Cruise. It's not like his most popular movie of his. I do think it's his first sci-fi movie. I don't think he's done any sci-fi before this. So
yeah, when I was researching for the draft, I didn't. I guess my picture of him is much more recent.
Okay.
Even newer than this, really. Like it's Mission Impossible movies and a couple other action films I've seen him in. That's my picture of him, and so this fit right in with that. Like it was sci-fi action,
Yeah.
And then I realized he was in a few like his earlier stuff wasn't really all action. It was like different much different genres than I associate with him now. So
yeah, and that's fair. He's definitely like been in a certain mode over the last decade or two.
Yeah. How can I top my last stunt?
Yeah. So I mean, really, like after he does Eyes Wide Shut with Kubrick, he's really like in full on action mode. Like really.
Yeah.
I mean, he did like that cameo in Tropic Thunder, but other than that, like I can't really think of anything that's not like action adjacent,
Yeah.
In the past couple of
I don't
decades.
I don't want to rabbit trail too far onto this. He fascinates me as an actor.
Yeah.
I don't love some personal stuff I know about him in general.
Sure.
But the thing that the two things that I think are amazing is the risk that he voluntarily takes on to make incredible set pieces. Because like no stunt coordinator would allow a stunt person to do the types of stunts that he's doing in it. Jumping the motorcycle off the side of a mountain.
Yeah.
Never. That would never happen, right? And so I love that one-upsmanship of himself mindset of doing his own stunts and doing better and better stuff. But the other thing that I think is so funny to realize that this was like an intentional goal that he had was the perfecting of his run.
Yeah.
Like getting it down to this beautiful, like it's not actually technically the
best way to run. Yeah.
Right. It looks good, but then as amazing, as that is, it's still incredibly fast.
Yeah.
For someone who's
5'7",
trying to set a world record or something, right? He's still running incredibly quickly in these.
Yeah.
So yeah, just seeing this might have been one of the first. I don't think there was like a specific him running into the house.
Yeah.
Kind of, but it wasn't like, hey, let's give him a long straightaway and like it normally is.
Yeah, there's a couple of running spot scenes in this movie where I'm like, oh yes, let's get some Tom Cruise runs in here, and then even like there's a couple of I rewatched some Cruise movies because we're doing the draft for the next episode, obviously. So I did some rewatches and some first watches, and there's definitely some Tom Cruise running back, way back in the 80s and 90s too. So, we get plenty of he's been at it for a while.
Yeah. I think the most iconic one probably that the one that specifically sticks in my mind a lot is Mission Impossible 3 when he's running down the side of the canal, because the breakdown of that scene, I saw a guy talking about just how incredible how fast he's running is, because it's like the third or fourth take, he's in like boots and wet clothes, and he's running and talking at people, and the speed he's running, it's like not technically Olympic placement contender speed,
sure,
but it's world class fast, given the fact that all those other variables, like the running, like he's speaking while he's trying to act while he's speaking, and the clothes he's in. It's just amazing. Such a cool little addition to the movies that he does that I think is really cool.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because in this movie he does most of his stunts, and something happened with him and Spielberg that is probably like maybe the last time that this ever happens with him. And that's, so Spielberg showed up at on the set of Mission Impossible 2 while they were filming, and just kind of like, I guess probably visiting Cruise or whatever on set for support. And Cruise was like doing some crazy stunt, of course, and he goes to the stunt guy and he's like, "Hey, why are you letting him do that?" And the stunt guy's like, "I can't. There's nothing I can do. He's he won't let me do it. He's what am I gonna do? And so one of the things that Spielberg got Cruise to uncharacteristically agree to is that Spielberg had final say on if he would do a stunt or not. So he still does like the vast majority of the stunts, but there are a few where Spielberg kind of was like, "Okay, Tom, I really, really don't want you to do this one," and he kind of went along with it for Spielberg. Yeah. So that's probably like, this might be the last time that ever happens in his career where a director doesn't let him do a stunt. So yeah, that's a fun fact about this movie. The last movie where Tom Cruise is told he can't do a stunt by the director. I don't know if that's actually true, but it seems plausible for sure. But yeah, let's move on, because we'll definitely get more into Cruise as we go, and especially next week when we do the draft. But Colin Farrell plays Agent Danny Whitwer, which Whitwer is a weird name, but alas, it's what we have to work with. This was originally offered to Matt Damon, which would have been interesting.
That would have been interesting to see.
I think he would have played it fine. It would have been. I don't see it being that incredibly different than Colin Farrell's. But yeah, it's really great casting. For Farrell's career is really like just taking off. He had been in a bunch of like action-packed B movies up to this point. Like he really like, this was really probably his breakout, I would imagine. If you look at his filmography, like you're not going to recognize the movies that he was in. They're like nothing movies. So this really is like his big breakout movie for Colin Farrell, which is a big deal because Colin Farrell has become a pretty big actor. I think he's a great actor. In fact, I think he's I think he's up there. I can't come up with like a top 10 list off the top of my head, but I would imagine like I would probably consider him one of the really good ones. So Spielberg I guess sees him in one of those B movies and it's like, yeah, I want this guy. I didn't really find anything a whole lot about how he ended up getting cast. But usually that's how it goes. Like Spielberg sees someone in something, and he's like, "Oh, let me get this guy to audition," and gives him the part. So, yes, Colin Farrell. You know, he kind of talked about one of the things was that he didn't have to do a ton of prep work for this movie because and I think he's right. There's not like a lot of like legalese or anything like that. Like the dialogue's pretty straightforward that he has. And so I guess like he had been in some movies where he really had to like study the script a whole lot because it had a lot of like language that he wasn't used to using.
Yeah.
But in this one he said it was actually like just kind of getting in the right headspace and showing up. And then too, like I thought it was funny. He has an American accent, sort of, that kind of gives away into his. I'm trying to remember where he's from. Is he Scottish or Irish or he's?
Ooh, I'm not sure. I haven't heard his
he is
voice recently
Irish.
Besides his movie.
Yeah.
Irish.
Yeah, he's Irish. Which makes sense. I should have known that after watching Banshees of Inisherin a couple years ago. But yeah, so I feel like there's a couple of times where like that accent kind of comes through, and they were just like, whatever, it's 2054, who knows what accents are like. But yeah, the other thing I thought was funny was he talked about on the first day of set, he like nearly had a meltdown because it dawned on him that he was going to have to like look at Tom Cruise and act across from him and be taking direction from Steven Spielberg.
Wow, yeah, that's probably a wild thing to walk into and just not have realized before.
Yeah, just it dawned on him and is like, oh my god, here we go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Colin Farrell is really good in this movie. He's really good looking, which helps. You have to have a good looking person play this character to make Tom Cruise feel threatened. Because if it's just some average Joe looking guy, you're not going to believe that Tom Cruise is threatened by this guy. It has to be it has to be another pretty good looking dude.
Yeah, and I feel like the position that his character plays with kind of being the maybe audience surrogate to explain all the technical stuff to that's the thing when there's a lot of technical exposition that needs to happen. You either need to just go with it and hope the audience catches on, which there's actually a really good film. I can't think of the name. It's maybe Looper. It's like a time
with
travel
Willis and Bruce Willis and JGL.
I think so. Yeah. Where all the technical stuff is not ever really explained. It's just kind of like given at face value, and there's no audience surrogate character. And so this is kind of new kid on the block. He knows the basics, but he's getting it explained to him.
Yeah.
And then he's like the twist.
Well, they're giving him a tour basically of the facility. So we get the tour along with them. Yeah. It's good. It's good. Definitely good like screenwriting if we have to explain how all this stuff works, then let's have this character need a tour of the facilities so that, John Andrew can explain it all to him. So
without it just being awkward exposition dump. So him telling one of his techs who work with him how all the stuff works wouldn't make sense. Yeah. So it's good, good method for doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I think I think he does really well acting across from Cruise. They have like a good kind of I guess like back and forth, like there's a little bit of tension that he really like carried well against Cruise, which isn't easy to do, I would imagine. Cruise he's not a big guy, but he's a big like personality. And so I would imagine it's intimidating to act across from him to some degree. And I feel like Farrell really like holds his own in that, right? So hats off to Colin Farrell for this one. Yeah, moving on. Samantha Morton plays Agatha, the female precog. Yeah, this was at one point supposed to be Kate Blanchett in this role, which at this point would have kind of made sense. Like it seems like Kate Blanchett and Samantha Morton were kind of like in similar career trajectories at this point, and they both kind of have that just like otherworldly atmosphere about them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You think of Kate Blanchett at this time was doing like the Lord of the Rings movies, and she kind of has that otherworldly elf, elf queen thing going, and there's a similar thing that you're going for with this character. They even talked about her kind of feeling angelic and divine, and like the way she looks and the way the character kind of feels.
Yeah.
So Blanchett probably would have made sense as well, but they end up going with Samantha Morton, who had just come off of Oscar and Golden Globes noms for her role in this movie Sweet and Lowdown from '99, which I don't really know anything about that movie.
Yeah.
But she got an Oscar nomination for it, so she was not like a lightweight coming into this role, obviously. Yeah, and one of the funny things is that she said she hadn't seen any cruise movies except for Magnolia. And so Spielberg like amusedly sat her down and was like, okay, here, pop in Jerry Maguire. You gotta watch at least one more. Watch Jerry Maguire. And so I thought that was funny.
Yeah. So she was unfazed. Well, maybe not unfazed, but it wasn't the same reaction to be.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
she hadn't seen his movies.
Yeah, it seems like she just like, because I read some other stuff where she didn't even have a TV for a long time growing up, and just like she wasn't like as engrossed in the world of film as a lot of people that end up in the industry are. Like she had obviously like was into it and loved it, but just like didn't grow up with it, and so she just had never seen a cruise movie. She, it just wasn't a part of her childhood, her kind of upbringing, and so it just wasn't something she was familiar with.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, fun fact about the precog characters: their names are obviously Agatha, Art, and Dashiell, or Dash, I think, in the movie. And they're named after Arthur Conan Doyle for Art, Dashiell Hammond for Dash, and Agatha Christie for Agatha. So, yeah, fun. That's a fun little fact for you. And the next guy on the list of cast, Max von Sydow, plays director Lamar Burgess, who is our mentor / unknown antagonist. But yeah, this is another, they had a lot of like people in mind for parts that either didn't work out or were refused or whatever, but Ian McKellen is the one for this one. So that would have been really good. I would have liked to see Ian McKellen in that role. But I think Max von Sydow does really good with it.
I agree.
But
it's kind of just interesting to see the what would have been with that different actor chemistry.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so Sydow is a Swedish actor. He was in like a bunch of Ingmar Bergman films back in the day, and then really like, I guess, moved to Hollywood and made a second career doing a bunch of like supporting roles like this. So he had been around the block. He in the interviews, he didn't really talk much about himself. He just kind of talked about how Spielberg was like a great director, and it's something that you hear sometimes actors talk about for Spielberg, which is that he leads by like suggestion, it's like you almost don't know that he's like directing you and leading you, but he just kind of like conversationally will like suggest something or ask a question that kind of leads you to somewhere. And he's
Yeah.
not just saying like, okay, now do this, this is what I need you to do. Like, there's obviously some of that, but a lot of his directing is very um like it almost like humbly approached. Like, I'm not going to like directly tell you what to do. I'm going to maybe give you a suggestion or ask you a question that maybe leads you to where I want you to go.
Yeah.
And Saito just really like kind of went on and on about how much he respected like his directing style and stuff. So that's
You
always
know,
cool to hear.
that's really, yeah, that's really interesting because thinking of it in those terms, I mean, not to get too specific with it, but I had a manager that was that way,
Mm-hmm.
like very much. I would say I want to do this, and then he would ask me a question that would cause me to be introspective and think about it a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to saying yes you should or no you shouldn't. Like
Yeah.
it help me think through it a little bit better, as opposed to a lot of things people experience as managers
Yeah.
being micromanaging
Mm-hmm.
and making every decision for you and not letting you. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that is a very interesting thing to think about in film concept.
Yeah. And I think it's really a reason too why it doesn't really apply to this movie, but movies where he has like a prominent child actor. It's the reason why he always gets such good performances out of children, because he just does the same thing with them. Like,
Yeah.
so his directing style doesn't like change a ton from like adults to children, because his directing style is already like really well suited for working with children, which is, let's like have a conversation and then maybe I'll ask you a question that leads you like somewhere, or make a suggestion that leads you somewhere. Which is like what works best for kids, because what kid is going to respond well to some dude just coming in and barking orders at them? Like,
yeah.
But if he's like, kind of feels like your pal, and it's conversational and you're talking and joking and stuff, and then he's like, when we do this, what do you think about trying this out, or that sort of thing? It's much more palatable.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that about Spielberg. He always seems like just a really kind person, even on set. Like, you never hear anything about him like just being rude or like barking orders or anything. At least not at this point. I haven't really read anything about that. So, yeah. So that's one thing Saito just kind of went on and on about. But I think he plays that part really well for Burgess.
Yeah.
He's kind of got that right air about him. The guy that you feel like you can trust, but then like when things flip, you're like, yes,
Yeah.
I can see it all along. It was this guy. He's got that. He rides that line really well, I think.
Yeah, he definitely does.
Because really, like, you have no reason to suspect that he's behind everything. I kind of had a feeling, I think early on, that it might have been, him or something, but it's even like maybe suspecting something early on, like he plays it really well, that line of a guy that you can very well like trust as your mentor, just as much as see being the guy that's like pulling all the strings behind the scenes to like do something awful.
Yeah. And he's even sick in the beginning, so he's even more
a little sympathetic.
I'm just a sick old man.
Yeah.
I can't be bad.
yeah. I even forgot about that. I forgot. He's like got this weird perpetual cold through that.
Yeah.
And you even get the feeling that he's had it for years.
This is a total kind of rabbit trail, but it makes me think about something that Hunter and I were talking about recently. Hunter pointed out that we saw oh gosh, I can't think of the new movie's name. Is it Strangers? Maybe it's they go to the house. It's the I'm rabbit trailing too far. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
He's Mr. He's in Split, the actor in Split.
Okay, yeah. McAvoy.
Yes. Okay, so he was just in See No Evil. That's what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And in this is so many connections. The original movie, which is actually like very new, the American version is only a couple years apart. In the original, they had twins. Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong thing. Anyway, it's just things that happen in film where it's like they get these actors and they're like, okay, do this certain thing, and it's like, what was the decision to make these people identical twins? Like, what was the thought behind that? And then they did this with him being sick, and it's like it probably was specifically to make us more sympathetic to his character and hide the fact that he is So we've arrived back at the film.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's like kind of something that you don't really think about, but yeah, someone wrote that into the script for a specific reason. It wasn't just like, oh, let's make him sick. Like it's like, this, maybe he's got this cough to make him more sympathetic, so you don't suspect
unless
him.
the actor was sick the day of. We don't know.
Then
I still need to read the script.
Then he just has to pretend to be sick the rest of the shooting schedule. Yeah. Next person on the list is Catherine Morris, who plays Laura Clark, the wife of John Anderton. Originally considered Jenna Elfman to play this part, who I'm really not familiar with. Like, I looked at her filmography and I'm like, I don't really know. I mean, I know the movies, obviously, like Dr. Dolittle she was in, and I know that, but most of them, I'm like, I don't. She was in Friends with Benefits. Like, she's just really not in a bunch of like recognizable stuff. So I don't know if she was maybe supposed to be up and coming at the time or something. But yeah, she doesn't get the part, so it doesn't really matter. But Catherine Morris, he had originally seen in the movie The Contender, and had brought her on to play a part in AI. But the part she played was cut in the final edit of the movie.
Ooh.
So he was like, it was kind of one of those things where he was like, hey, to make up for your scenes being cut, I have this other part for you. And brings her on to play Anderton's wife, Lara, which is a different name than she has in this. I can't remember what her name is. It seems like it's maybe Lisa or something like that in the novella, but I don't know why they changed her name. But Lara here, and yeah, he really, like, one of the things that she talked about was that he gave her the freedom to kind of tell him where she was with the character. So it goes back to that same sort of thing of like, she needs to kind of talk her character through and kind of fill it out, and Spielberg's just like, okay, yeah, let's talk it out, let's fill out where you are and stuff. So just another like point for Spielberg for working well with actors. And he said she provided a lot of like heart and soul to the movie, he felt like. So but then the rest of the cast is kind of, those are like the main players, I would say. Catherine Morris as Laura Clark kind of comes in later. It feels like she's kind of like, I don't know, she might not even really show up in a big way until like the third act. But she is a major part of the story. But a lot of the other people are kind of those side characters, like I was talking about, that kind of were influenced by the noir style of like storytelling, where you have these guys that like give you your next clue to figure out the mystery and, pushes the story along. They kind of like unlock something. And so, but like, usually those characters have something about them that's like memorable. So they like stick out. And that's kind of how he built, it seems like they built these a lot of these characters. You have some like Steve Harris as Jad. It's kind of like the pre-com guys, Jad is Steve Harris. Neil McDonough plays Fletcher. Daniel London plays Wally, the character, your favorite creep. I was right on the name. It was Wally.
Yeah. The teeth brushing, man, that was there was a lot of creepy stuff, but like when he was brushing her teeth, I was just like,
Yeah.
ooh, this is too creepy.
Yeah, it's weird. He's got some sort of like weird. Does he kiss her at some point?
He gets too close. I don't know what it was. It wasn't exactly that, but yeah, when
in
she
my
gets
memory,
brought
he kisses
back,
her, but maybe not.
I want to say so. And I think what they were going for was like harmless, nice guy. Maybe not. I don't know.
I don't think so. I think they were like creeping him up.
he was. I'm not saying I don't think he was creepy. I'm saying what they were what I thought maybe they were trying to go for. But there are too many of those like just not okay, and that probably is intentional for the lack of agency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Of
kind of play that up a little bit.
Precogs, yeah, just to make the whole thing apparently unethical.
Oh yeah.
Very apparent in how unethical it is.
Yeah. For
the people that are the precogs and the system itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
Sorry, I was not defending the character of Wally at all. I was exploring what the mindset may have been. Wally is not okay. Don't be Wally.
Yeah. I'm gonna edit that out so people think you love Wally.
Oh gosh, no, please.
Yeah. And all these people are all of those guys are fine. Kind of at the end of the day, like characters that I'll probably just forget eventually, like once I'm removed from this. But you have Lois Smith that plays Dr. Lois Henneman. And she does really good. I feel like she's in one scene. She gives some like exposition she's kind of like an exposition dump character,
Yeah.
But like she plays it really well. Like she's kind of like a little bit creepy. She's got a little bit of like, kind of that. I don't really know how to describe it. She's like your grandma that also feels like she might kill you.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's weird. They did originally want Meryl Streep to play that character. And
I could see that working really well.
I think she would have. She's Meryl Streep, so I think she would have done it well. But I kind of like that they didn't go with Meryl Streep because I feel like you kind of need a lady more like this has less like baggage that she's bringing into the role as an actress.
Yeah,
like less well known, so that they can really play up the kind of the feel that character has. Like, yeah. Tim Blake Nelson plays Gideon, the organist slash what do you call the people that take care of cemeteries? I feel like there's a name for that job. Not like gravedigger, but like
groundskeeper. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's a specific term for like a caretaker of a cemetery, but I can't think of it. But anyways, he's that / organist. I don't know why he's playing an organ. I don't know.
So aren't they in like? Are they? Well, I have two questions about this.
Yeah,
I don't want to
sure.
Derail too much. Aren't they not present? Aren't they like in some kind of simulated reality situation?
Yeah, they're. I didn't fully grasp what was going on, but it's definitely like they're in some sort of like, I don't know if it's like a catatonic state or like, or if they're in some sort of like dream reality that they're, I don't know if they're like fully conscious and just having to stand there and watch the murder they were going to commit over and over
while he plays the organ in the background. Yeah, I'll save my other thing for like plot discussion and theory. I don't want to derail us again.
Yeah,
but his character was very funny.
That does make me wonder if it is that latter thing of they're just standing there in a catatonic state, but conscious enough to watch their future murder over and over. at the end they let all these people go free, and
They might have
if they're
messed
just
some of the
standing
innocent people up.
if they're just standing there watching a potential murder they might have committed over and over again, then like they're definitely going to be murderers now. Like, oh man,
Oh,
yeah, definitely. Well, we can get into some of this stuff with like quibbles when we get into it. But yeah, I don't,
questionable ethics.
yeah, Tim Blake Nelson he's definitely one of those guys that's like, oh, there's Tim Blake Nelson, you know. I guess his most notable role would have been "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" I don't, I think mostly he plays just kind of characters like this, kind of like
Yeah.
side characters, other than "Oh Brother." But, I mean, I don't really have much to say about the character. He is interesting. It's an interesting choice.
No, it was funny when he said, "Oh, the prisoners like the music," and he's just sitting on his organ. Just such a very, it's funny that you said that about the film noir memorable character thing.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their thing.
They do.
The plant lady and then organ guy, and then the characters with set pieces.
They stand out. I appreciate it for that. I appreciate that they thought these characters through enough to be like, what quirk can we give this character so that they'll stand out in the movie? Lady that makes weirdly sadistic plants. Guy that plays organ to people in a catatonic state. Like, it's like,
yeah. For every other movie that could have been just like a smug warden number 5 character with nothing characterizing about his character other than I'm the warden. No nonsense here. Like, he was just like a oddly goofy guy that played the organ for his captive audience.
Yes. And then you have Peter Stormare playing Dr. Solomon Eddy, who is black market eye doctor with a with a vendetta against John Anderton, apparently. And he kind of stands out too. He's very briefly there, and then there's this lady that's with him, Caroline Lagerfeld, playing Greta Van Eyck, which who knew she even had a name? I don't know. And then there's really like, I guess the other character like this would be Jason Antoon, who plays Rufus Riley, the cyber parlor guy. He kind of stands out a little bit too as a kind of side character that pushes the plot along. But I don't know what his quirk would be other than just he's like weird cyber salesman guy, weird creepy cyber sex salesman.
And he he started worshiping her. Well, not word, but that he played into the like.
Oh yeah, he really was like awestruck,
Yeah, which is funny because I don't know, just like everything about his characterization seemed that, like, in the 2 seconds we saw him before this, right? It's like he doesn't seem to take anything that seriously.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
he's the guy that's doing the cyber parlor, right? He's not super, I don't know. Anyway, not a super serious person. And then she shows up and he's like, oh, are you reading my mind right now? Like, he's afraid of her and like,
Yeah, well, it kind of plays into the fact that no one knows anything about these precogs in the general public. So they kind of like think of them as these like divine, supernatural, almost like, there's these like there's this kind of like mythological feeling around the precogs because they don't know that they're just like people like laying there with brain scanners and some milk. Like, but yeah, most of the other characters are like pretty just kind of like nothing. I mean, you have a bunch of like people in pre-crime. Jessica Capshaw, which was Kate Capshaw, Spielberg's wife's oldest daughter. She was in the movie as one of the pre-crime cops, I guess.
Oh, cool.
Ivana. Like you don't even really know these characters' names, even though they have names. Patrick Kilpatrick plays Not. Anna Maria Horsford plays Casey. It's just kind of a bunch of people that you don't really know. You do have like a couple others, like there's Mike Binder plays Leo Crow, who obviously stands out because he's got a pretty important scene with of Mr. Of old John Andy, as I imagine some of his friends might call him. Ari Gross plays Howard Marks. Ashley Crow, Sarah Marks, and then Joel Gretsch plays Donald Dubin, who I can only assume is the guy that the wife is having the affair with. I didn't know. I don't know if that's his name or not, but I can only assume that's who he is. They kind of have their little moment, and then of course you have like Anne Lively, who's in the Visions as Jessica Harper, plays her. This kid, Dominic Scott Kay, plays the young Sean Anderton, which the reason I wanted to point that out is because he plays the voice of Wilbur in Charlotte's Web.
Oh.
Yeah. That was fun.
Yeah.
And then you have like the people that are like around the Visions, like the old woman with the pipe, Fiona Hale. She has a bunch of credits in movies. And then William Mapother is the hotel clerk, and he is Tom Cruise's cousin. Yeah, which Tom Cruise's actual last name is Mapother. I would imagine he's probably changed it legally at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was born Tom Cruise Mapother. So yeah. Yeah, the only other thing that I thought was interesting crew wise, it's not really, I mean, cast wise, it's not really cast, it's more just some cameos on I put bus passengers, but I can't remember if it's a bus or like a subway. But you have 3 cameos in Paul Thomas Anderson and Cameron Crowe and Cameron Diaz. They're all in that scene
I think it's a subway. But yeah.
Subway. For some reason I wrote bus, but yeah, when I was reading I was like, I think that was actually a subway thing.
Yeah, I didn't catch them in
I think Cameron Crowe might be the guy that's like reading the newspaper that changes to his face and then like looks up at him. I think that was Cameron Crowe, but I didn't really catch PTA or Cameron Diaz. So, and I didn't really feel like going back and Googling it to see if I could see them. So, but they're in there because my research said they were. So just trust it. Hi. Quick reminder that you, yes, you, can be a huge help to the production of this show. If you visit establishingshotpod.com/donate, you'll find out how to join the Establishing Shot family through some giving tiers starting as low as $5 a month. You heard that right, only $5 a month. And not only will you be helping me keep the show going, but you'll also get some perks yourself, like early and ad-free episodes, bonus episodes, access to a Discord server where we can chat it up about the show and movies in general, and more. Might even let you choose a movie for me to review for the show. Check out that link in the show notes to learn more. Back to the show. Let's talk production, because there's a lot of fun stuff with this movie.
Yeah.
They shot.
I want to set the record straight. This is a good. Okay,
a good point for you to do.
I said two movie things that were complete, just brain blanks. The first one, it's not Looper, it's Primer.
Primer, okay.
ER ending time travel movies. I don't know if you've seen Primer.
I have not.
Okay, Primer was actually what I was trying to say about that was that it is a really good job of taking a really complex idea and just not really breaking it down. That's what I was trying to say about that. The other thing was it was nothing to do with See No Evil. I don't know how that happened in my head. It was We Live in Time. It's the new Andrew Garfield, Florence Pugh movie.
Yeah.
There's the scene, which is not a spoiler necessarily, I don't think at all, that when Andrew Garfield meets Florence Pugh's family, there's twin brothers,
Mhm.
which like doesn't make sense. Like what's the back? Again, that's what I was trying to say. Like it just in the story they just that's not explained. It's not. It's kind of a thing that happens, but it's just interesting what the thought process of, hey, let's have these twins, specifically both of them, be her. Anyway, so
Yeah.
needed to set those two
Set the record
brain
straight.
melts straight, and the most important of all, Wally is not okay. That in case I'm going to keep saying that to make it harder for you to edit out.
Yeah, I'm marking down all the timestamps so I can edit all of them out. Extra work for myself that'll be totally worth it.
Oh no.
No, definitely will not be wasting time editing all those. Finding all the times where you say Wally is bad and edit it out. Yeah. So yeah, production. It was a 4-month shoot from March to July 2001. And obviously, released the next year. In 2002. But yeah, so a pretty long shoot, 4 months. Pretty long for a Spielberg movie, but I guess they had a lot of. There is a lot of set pieces in this movie. There's a lot going on. So it was shot mostly in studio. Obviously, this it kind of feels like a movie shot mostly in studio. They did do a few outside shots in LA and Virginia. There's one, very ending shot is in Maine. And then of course they have some, DC shots because you've got to get your setting. You've got to get some shots of the Washington Monument and the White House and whatnot. So, but yeah, you had mentioned the digital preview stuff when we were talking before.
Oh yeah.
Was that off mic before we started? I think it was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, did you want to say, because you thought that was really interesting?
Yeah. So I heard it and I didn't believe it, and I verified it a few other places that it's the first movie to have an entirely digital production design phase. So all the production design was digital as opposed to,
storyboarding and
catalog. Yeah, analog. And the other thing was apparently that was aided the process of a video game called Minority Report. Everybody runs, which didn't look great. I didn't look into that too much. I love games, but it did not look worth your time. So
yeah, I know nothing about that. That didn't even come up in my research. So that shows you like how
left a strong impact on the community.
Yes. And like video games have come up in my research. Like the Jurassic Park video games came up in my research for those movies. So this one must have been really bad. But those Jurassic Park video games kind of flopped. So, they didn't like make a big splash or anything. But DreamWorks had like a video game division at one point.
Oh.
So
so it was a PS2 game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it did launch, it looks like.
The Minority Report one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody runs.
That was a strange line to me. I was like, why does he keep saying that?
it kind of felt like one of the that was funny because it's like he was talking himself into doing something that everyone does that doesn't seem successful in terms of like the pre. I mean, I don't know if he meant the pre. It didn't seem applicable to the pre-crime. It was probably applicable to the fact that he was a cop before.
Yeah.
Because the pre-crime guys, they don't give you a chance, really.
Yeah.
If you
everybody tries to run is, I guess, what he should have said. So full digital preview. They didn't really do, like I said, any storyboards. It's all like digital simulation and pre-visualization. Mm-hmm. So it's all previs was really, which is the easier way to, that's how most people refer to it, previs. So it's basically like you can watch, like if you get the Blu-ray or DVD, you can watch in the special features like the pre-visualization of, let's say, like the like the jetpack chase sequence in the alley. So there's like a full, it's basically like, think like an animatic. So where they kind of animate out a scene. So it's like that, but digitally on a computer. They kind of do a previs of the scene, which is they get all the movements down and all the shots that they want to get down. So like by the time they're on set, they know like all the camera placements that they need to have. They know like so it kind of like takes the place of the storyboard, but even like adds on to the capability, because there's only so much you can do with camera placement for a storyboard.
Right.
For a pre-visualization, you're actually in the three-dimensional space digitally and know where you need to put the camera based on the shot you're getting in the previs. And it's really like, when you watch them, it's really just like these human shaped things moving around in like a very blocky space. But it's enough to get the feel of the space of the scene and where people need to be. It helps you like block out the space with the props and the different characters, and know where to put the camera and that sort of thing. So yeah, that was a huge deal. This was really like in the late 90s. This kind of was in its infancy and being started to be used, but this is, at this point, is like really when it's at the capability where you can actually use it to its full degree, which they did.
Yeah. I would have assumed later. I would have assumed like probably 2010s or something.
Yeah.
Before that was like fully digital.
Yeah. Which obviously, like, it's still like, if you do go watch the sorry, if you do go watch like that previs of that scene, it's like, it's very, very like archaic looking like digital renderings of the space. And so like by 2010s, you're probably getting like, it's probably developed even more where like you can work in, because I mean, I say that, but like, you already at that point, if you think about Pixar is doing, they've been since the mid 90s making fully computer generated spaces. And if you listen to those guys talk about how they make their movies, they're building sets just like you would build a real set. So like, they're not even like building out a whole room. They know, I'm only shooting this part of the room over here. And so they're like, to save money and time, they only build digitally that half of the room, and they have to like, you know, digitally place lights, do lighting and stuff like that. So this stuff is already like being done in animation, like in Pixar. But
that's a good point.
It's kind of just now moving to, okay, we're gonna utilize this sort of digital technology, this digital like set building, to take the place of storyboarding, and so that we can really get a feel for the space before we even get on set. So that's kind of like, when you think about it that way, it makes sense that it was kind of ready to go. When you think about it in the sense of like, oh, Pixar's basically been doing this already, you know?
Yeah.
But I even heard recently, like, I think Incredibles, which was, when did Incredibles come out? 2008?
First one,
or 2000?
I think it was.
No, it's early 2000s. It's definitely early 2000s.
2004.
Yeah. So a little after this.
I wasn't sure.
So that was the movie I think I remember hearing that about. Like, they're basically like not even building the whole sets, because
Oh yeah,
because before that, they would like build out the whole room, but then they were realizing they were like wasting time and money on building out these entire spaces, and you're not even going to shoot like this corner over here behind the camera. So why build out that digital space if you're not even going to shoot it? Really interesting, but not totally applicable, not totally a bunny trail that we need to keep going down for this movie. But yeah, let's talk about the cinematography, because this is a thing about this movie that I'm not sure I'm entirely on board with. In fact, like when when I was looking back through my notes while I was watching the movie, there's several points where I'm like, why is this lit this way, or like weird lighting. And it's, I don't know, it's really strange. So here's the thing, like in hindsight, hearing like Kaminsky talk about his decisions and stuff, and Spielberg talk about how they like wanted the movie to look and feel, I kind of get it, but I still don't know if I like it fully. Even though like I understand why they made a decision, I'm still not sure it does what they were wanting it to do.
Specifically the bloom, like the bloom level was so.
Yeah, it's the light is just like takes over scene. Like when they were in the mall, and
specifically that scene, and maybe that's the point. Like maybe they wanted it to feel that way, but I just don't understand.
I don't get it, honestly.
Yeah,
it's like the light coming through windows just like takes over the whole scene, and like it's hard. I don't know. It was distracting to me, and I feel like I shouldn't be distracted by the cinematography. I should be watching this chase through the mall, but instead I'm like, why are they doing this with the lights? And I guess part of that's probably watching a movie knowing that you're going to analyze it for a few hours on a podcast is in the back of your mind. But yeah, I mean, I just don't get it. I know they're going for this like film noir feel. So they have to figure out, okay, how do we do like film noir but in the future? And so they're like, instead of like a lot of darkness and shadows, which is characteristic of film noir, it's going to be like very metallic and, like blue, more blue. Instead of doing like darker shadows, it's like, let's do more blues. And I don't know, like, but yeah, so Kaminsky is like, does suggest this bleach bypass calibration for the film processing. So basically what that does is it like whitens faces a lot. It fades a lot of the color and brings out more cool and bluish metallic tones and gives it that sort of ambiance. And that's like Spielberg talks about, he wanted it to be like a grittier looking movie and stuff. But I don't know. It's just, I don't know that it works for me. It's just
it felt too
off.
Shallow.
Yeah.
But because when you've got so many things in the shot, overexposed might be the right way to say it, where it's just it is so bright, and I feel like I'm repeating myself at this point, but I don't understand. I've seen movies that capture the dystopian authoritarian hellscape kind of a place without it being so blinding.
And they're going for like, so like I think of like Blade Runner, or even like Blade Runner 2049. Those kind of have that kind of film noir thing, but they like add a bunch of neon,
right,
coloring
and like atmospheric
stuff, and
fog and stuff.
And so like I'm like, those movies feel more like, okay, let's do film noir but in color and in the future. And this, I don't know. I I understand what they were going for. I just don't think it fully accomplishes what they were going for, and it ultimately was kind of distracting to me. And it's really sucks because I really really liked this movie, but and I wanted to like. It's one of those things where like quibbles, like there's a few quibbles I have with the movie like this that I'm like keep it from like just being like one of my favorite Spielberg movies, you know.
Yeah.
And I really hate that. I wanted to like it more, you know. There's nothing wrong with wanting to like a movie more.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's part of
for people out there that, you know.
Yeah, that's part of the analysis for me is things that came like really close to the mark or that I did enjoy.
Yeah.
But just, you know, there were a few things that I didn't like or didn't understand that I like to analyze deeper and maybe change my opinion on, or
for sure. Yeah, so one of the things I did like about the movie is the visions. I love the visions and the editing of those and the way like they show up on like the control panel and on the walls of the like ballroom thing at the end. And like and the overhead things in the precog chamber. Like anytime those visions show up, I'm just like, oh, I love this. This is like so interesting. And so what's cool about them is Spielberg actually like he hired that out third party to this group called Imaginary Forces. They had done some work on the credits of the movie Seven from '95 that Spielberg really liked. And so he reached out to them and he kind of pitched this idea of them filming these precog visions for him. His only like his main note was, other than obviously like giving them the, you know, the script so that they know like what they need to capture in the visions. But his main note was just like to not make them rectangular because humans don't see like in a like rectangular like shape like we do, like you see on a movie screen. We, you know, it's a more circular view that we see in. So that's the only like major note he had about what he wanted them to do. And so yeah, these guys, they go and like they talk to some cognitive scientist specialists. And so they kind of take notes of like, okay, we want images like in this perpetual movement, jumping back and forth through time. They need to be like kind of fragmented. And then also these are murders. So it's an intense situation. The mind is in fight or flight. So like there's like random details, but most of the details are lost, you know. And so that's like kind of the cognitive notes that they took and how, and you see it like that. It's very like plays into into that. They described the guys, the two main guys that were in the special features from this Imaginary Forces group. They described them as live Polaroids, which I thought was really interesting. They're kind of like these candid. It's like they're capturing these candid little pieces of this event. And they are kind of like little live. It's almost like now that I'm thinking about it, it's like they were just there and they were taking pictures with their iPhone and they have live photos turned on, you know. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of what it is, you know. It's a bunch of live photos like thrown together. But yeah, so they basically like they went out and filmed all this and then they had to like edit it all together. And so they had like these layers that they were working with where like they could fade people in and out, you know, layered on top of another image and change the focus and stuff like that. Yeah, I really, really loved the way these looked. I thought they were great. And you start off with seeing it. It's like one of the first things you see is watching this vision of the marks, you know, that first murder. I don't know. What did you think about these visions?
Yeah, I thought it was well done as well. It definitely felt can't think of the word I'm looking for. It definitely felt like a well made. It wasn't just like a glitch sequence necessarily. Like
Yeah.
it felt thought out, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
especially hearing the thought process and then knowing like that it is people doing it
Mm-hmm.
or
Yes.
people seeing it. It's not a like a computer situation. It's not seeing the future. It's not. It was that grainy kind of.
Yeah.
And then even him having to like kind of sift through it as it's coming through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really loved it. I love that it like throws it at you right at the beginning, so you're like, "Oh wow, what is going on?" Like it's intense, to watch those things. And they made basically three main versions of this with the three main murders, which would be that first Howard Marks murder, and then you have the Anne Lively murder that plays, a big part of the movie, and then Anderton's, murdering Leo Crow, that whole thing too, which that one definitely they definitely had to hit certain details with that one because it plays so much into like the reveal as he gets closer and closer to it, like revealing all the I love that. I think that's so fun when like you have you see the vision, so you see all the things that are going to happen, and then like getting to see how those like actually play into it as he goes along and gets closer and closer to that event. It's just fun.
Yeah.
Like the flipping over of the 9 and the 6, because in the vision there's both 9 and a 6. The lady with the pipe laughing at him and stuff, and
Well, yeah, and it definitely sets you up. That's
it's tension building.
Well, yeah, it's not. That's not. I was mistaken when I was thinking about it before I was talking. But yeah, so the first scene is the first murder they stop.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then like they're going to do another. They get another ball, and he's like, "Oh, someone's premeditating. How dumb are they?" Or what? He says something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you realize it's him, and so that sets up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The main conflict is.
Yeah.
Well, geez, I got to figure out. And the whole time you're kind of like, so he's not gonna do this, right? That's like there was what it's confusing. It's weird, and then you get there, and it's like, okay, shoot this guy. This is
yeah. You want him to kill him too. Yeah.
So that was really well done, and then pulling you back out of it.
It's just good writing. I
was gonna ask you, did it feel strange for you to have him reading Miranda rights to the guy?
a little bit, yeah.
That pulled me out because I just like they every time else. So maybe that was the point. He was going back to being a cop, as opposed to
being a pre-crime cop. Yeah.
Yes, being the explicitly all the new laws that are over. He was going back to like attempted justice in a different way.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe that was the point. That must have been the point.
And he didn't
because
have
it
like
did
the
feel very
halo handcuff either. So
right, he didn't have the halo. But yeah, it's just always by the order of the pre-crime division, and then he read his Miranda rights. I think that had to be the point.
Do you think?
Because it did.
Do you think they'll still be reading Miranda rights in 30 years?
Maybe. I hope.
Yeah. I don't. I think the reading of Miranda rights is like, I don't think that actually means anything legally, but they do it, I guess. I don't think it.
I mean, no, I think it does though, because if they don't,
it doesn't. It doesn't.
Aren't aware of your right to not self-incriminate, and then you self-incriminate, that they can't use any of the stuff that you. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
I don't know the whole thing.
Yeah.
The only thing I know is you just don't. Talking doesn't help you. The reason that the amendment exists is to protect innocent people.
Yeah.
Because you can incriminate yourself to something you're not even intending.
Right.
You don't even know is illegal. So just don't talk to the cops. That's what I know.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Especially pre-crime cops.
That doesn't
That's
hurt
really
Eli.
pointless.
Well, yeah, because they already know they're just gonna halo you, and
Yeah.
then you listen to the organ for
Yeah.
20 years.
Well, I mean, longer than that. Did these guys die in those pods? Did they die in there?
Well, at the end, he says it's the 6-year experiment, so
Yeah, but I mean,
I'm sure people
if
died in the
if
pods.
the legislation passed, like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand the science that's going on there, and I don't really have. I don't really have to enjoy the movie. But
No,
now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, do they just like, do they die in there, or do they just keep them alive forever? Like,
well, as far as the plot is concerned, I think the explanation was that they released everyone that was
they did,
captured
but
because of that.
But that's only because like things went to crap. Like if the legislation.
Oh, you're meaning if they hadn't?
Yeah, if the legislation would have passed, like, what do you do? What do you just like perpetually add like millions and millions of people into this over time?
Yeah,
like I don't.
At some point, it would just work out to make them batteries or something.
Yeah.
Go Terminator with it. But no, yeah,
and then it's also like, is this like any different than the death penalty? Like, because they're not being allowed to be humans, like human beings,
or like appeal, or
so like it's basically the death penalty. So what's the point of like having them in the pods? Like like why don't you just kill them? I don't know.
Yeah, that would almost
saves money. Like,
I mean, well,
I mean, I know,
yeah, but
I don't believe in that. Let's get the
let's
set the record straight. I am not for the death penalty.
Oh, you're right. Yeah,
thinking trying to put myself in the shoes of the pre-crime division, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think part of it maybe is in the story they hadn't worked out all the I don't know. They weren't preparing for themselves to be wrong because they said multiple times they're never wrong.
Right. They like believe that was like a like tenet that they believed in, I guess, that they're never wrong. The cogs are never wrong. But
yeah, maybe that was just kind of a it served as a set piece.
Yeah.
And then also it made them slightly less horrendous. But then again, yeah, I don't know.
Well, in the novella, it's like they're sent to jail. Like they're not like catatonic. Like they're sent to jail just like you would send a criminal to jail now in the novella. So
okay. Yeah.
Which makes more sense to me, like, because like you're trying to stop murder, but like then you're basically like taking these people's lives away. So I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like,
who didn't murder anyone yet?
The thought process of like of like putting these people in pods perpetually for all we know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not for like more exposition than needed, but now I'm kind of wishing we would have got a little bit of more exposition about what they're planning to do with all these people.
Well, I've got a question for you that's related to this.
Okay. Let's just keep going down the bunny trail. Why not?
Do you think that the end of the movie is his Halo reality?
No. I think that's dumb.
Okay. Look. I am not a fan of
no offense if you like it
the whole time.
No offense if you like that theory, but to me it just seems like a dumb theory.
To me, for what the movie is trying to do, I think it's dumb. I don't think it holds up necessarily.
I did hear that was a thing that people have like wondered about.
Yes. And then when I didn't see that before. I watched it, thought about it, looked at a couple of like reviews from people that I watch reviews of stuff about.
Yeah.
And then was reading something where somebody said, oh yeah, this definitely is, because the thing that, the organist warden says is, they say you see your life flash before your eyes and your wildest dreams come true, or something very similar to the wildest dreams.
Yeah.
And it seems like the wildest dream of him would be to take down the system. But I don't know.
It's open.
It's circumstantial at best.
It's open-ended enough for like it's open-ended enough to where I guess you could have that reading, but I don't know. I think it's
I don't think it.
because like his wildest dream wouldn't be like to take down the system. He helped
Be his
build the
kid.
system.
Oh, you think?
He helped to build the system because he was so upset that his kid was taken and there's nothing he could do about it. So he believed in the system. Like, so it's not like in his wildest dreams to like that this whole thing went to crap. Like his wildest dreams would be like that it was the best system in the world and no one ever lost their children again. Like,
yeah, that's true. Or his kid was back or something like that.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
He found his kid and he never died or whatever and was an adult now, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And I don't know if I love the ending. We can talk about that, I guess, closer to the end of our discussion, but yeah, we'll save that for later. Let's keep digging into the production, coming all the way. He did. So back to the visions. They were processed by Asylum VFX, and this group is the ones that like kind of linked them into the scenes. So like they're the ones that like, I guess like they had to go in and post and like fit them onto like the control panel screens and the screens on the in the precog chamber and stuff like that. Like they weren't actually like looking at them, I don't think. And
okay.
Or something like that. They basically went in and like made sure they added in the visions into the movie. Yeah, so there are 450 shots with digital VFX in the movie, which is by today's standards not too many. And yeah, it really like, so ILM does a lot of those. They do, I think ILM does about 270 of those shots, and most of it is like adding depth to like real sets, or like adding details to an already existing set, like the deadly vines that like get Tom Cruise in the neck or whatever, like adding stuff like that in is mostly what they do. There's really only two scenes that are like mostly CGI, which are the Hall of Containment, which we've been talking about. Is, there's like a handful of like real people in pods, and then they like basically like scan those people and digitally recreate them over and over, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So that scene, like especially like the shot where they're like, it's like an overhead shot and they're like standing on the platform and all of them are coming up, that's like mostly CGI.
Okay.
So that scene, and then like the maglev car chase, is mostly CG. So they even like, they shot Tom Cruise on a live action model of the maglev car against a blue screen, but they basically like took Tom Cruise out of those shots and put him into the CGI shot. And I think it doesn't look that great.
Yeah.
The maglev, like when it's going like up and down the wall and he's jumping around, I'm like, I'm not sure that this little section ages all that well.
Yeah, I mean,
it doesn't look bad.
Yeah,
but I definitely noticed it.
Maybe part of the benefit of it being that weird bleach filter situation is kind of how
it can kind of hide some of that. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of how the CGI in like the Star Wars prequels doesn't look all that bad, because it a lot more is hidden by the hue and the lower resolution, and that's why the 4K remaster situation usually messes that stuff up, is because like you're upscaling it and that's bringing out all the problems. Yeah, so I didn't think it looked incredible, but I've definitely seen worse.
I've seen worse, but I still like. I was like, yeah, this doesn't look that great. But
Yeah.
alas, it is what it is. I mean, they like the maglev tracks and the roads and stuff were all like CGI. Even
Mhm.
I did think it was interesting. He like the guy that did all that stuff actually like built a physical model because he was like, it was hard for me to wrap my brain around like how all the roads would intersect and stuff in a
Mm.
computer model. So I built it like for real, like a small little model so that I could like wrap
Oh.
my head around it, which made total sense to me because that was like, I was like, yeah, if I had that job, I would have done the same thing because like I need to be able to like move around in the space actually.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I thought that was cool. And then yeah, the Hall of Containment, of course, they did some blue screen stuff for that for the CGI. And then the holograms was really cool. They, obviously that's CGI'd. And I think the holograms I do think look good because you don't have to have them look real, per
Mm.
se. And so with the holograms, they would get like the actors and do, I think it was like somewhere between like 11 and 15 different camera angles. And then they would do this thing called, I don't want to get this wrong, volume carving, which is basically like they build a 3D representation from all those camera angles that they shot them in. And they like, it's like a volume carving technique is what they called it. And they basically like take and get all the different angles and like carve off the stuff they don't need from those different angles. So you end up with like a 3D, CGI representation of this person that you can then like insert into shots in post.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. And so, you have the holograms like really in two spots that I can think of. Though you have the lesser important one where, they're in the cyber parlor, like grinding up on dudes and
Yeah.
and then there's the other one where there's like all those people, like can't remember what they're saying to him, but
Oh, it was like it was like congratulating, like an Oscar or something. Yeah.
which that was funny, but
Yeah.
but then obviously the more important one is the holograms of his son and his wife, where it's like it's like hologram versions of like home videos, kind of.
Yes.
Which I thought was interesting,
Yeah. Well, it really reminded me, which this is not going to be like a reference at this point that many people, unless you follow tech, will get. But like the Apple Vision Pro, one of the things that their AR VR headset thing, one of the things they have is called it's like spatial video or something. I don't know what their term for it is.
Yeah.
But basically, you can record 3D video. So the use case that they show for it is so dystopian, where it's like your kid's birthday party or something, and you put this on, and you're like, why is Dad got his AR headset on during my birthday party? And so it's like you're recording it. And so it's like when I first saw this, I kind of just chuckled, like, that's what that reminds me of. And then it was really sad.
Like you could
really
imagine John Anderton with this thing on and his wife like, if you want some, you better take that thing off.
Yeah, that was funny. That was funny because I was like hoping it wasn't gonna go further, and it didn't. That was good.
Yeah,
because that would have just felt weird. But yeah, it was a sad, with his son. That was a sad scene.
It plays really well, and I think honestly, like, it's Tom Cruise. Like he plays it really well, and I really think that's something he does pretty well throughout his career. Is like having moments, and we can talk about this more next week when we're digging into Cruise. But like having moments where like his like cool, confident guy breaks down for a moment, and you see like a softer side of him. He does that really, really well, and that's kind of one of those moments for him in the film, is sitting there, kind of talking to these home videos. And
Yeah, that was really sad. Like he's just repeating the lines he knows, or repeating what he says.
And it kind of adds to like the because it's this sad moment, but it's also this like, it's sad in a couple different ways, like sad for the character and his trauma and his loss, but also sad in a more like that dystopian kind of like, this is where we are now kind of thing. With the way that the camera, because so when the camera moves out of his perspective, you can see that these holograms are only look perfect from, looking at them straight on. They kind of get distorted and like a little like weird looking when the camera moves to the side and you see it from the side. So I thought that was interesting too, like an interesting thing to show, like, okay, this is from his perspective, but let's move the camera to the side and you can see like this isn't real. It's like kind of like emphasizing this isn't real,
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that, I thought that was really interesting. But there are a good bit of like actual sets. Like they did a lot of like the whole pre-crime unit and the precog chamber are like fully built sets. The tenement, where he gets his eyes changed and they have the whole spider sequence, that's like a set that they fully build.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of this thing where like Spielberg still at this point, he's like, I want real sets. I don't want to do CGI if I don't have to for certain things. Like they do some blue screen stuff, obviously. But yeah, he wants real sets for his actors to like be in and interact with. And I think that's still today, even like I prefer real sets and real shots over like blue and green screen stuff,
oh yeah, those scenes felt the most grounded to me.
Yeah,
when they were like, especially in the chamber and the the pre-crime like office.
Yes, yeah,
those felt really like those were significantly more engaging, I guess, to watch, because it didn't feel as strange as some of the other shots or colors.
Well, the pre-crime, one of the interesting things about the design of the whole like pre-crime chamber goes back to something you mentioned earlier, and it's like all the glass, like everything is glass. And they were talking about how they wanted to emphasize like, oh, they really believe in this. They believe it's 100% accurate and that they have nothing to hide. So hence all the transparency. And I was like, oh, that's something where like design plays into like the story and the theme. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, because you can't hide what's on the screen because it's visible from both sides.
You can see into the precog chamber, like they're it's not like they're closed off from everyone. Like everyone can see them. That's passing by or whatever. And I thought that was really interesting. Another cool thing that Spielberg pointed out was that the pre-crime like symbol that you see like on all their vests and stuff is the shape of the precog like milk chain.
Yeah, the milk pod. that was cool. I don't think I noticed that when I was watching it, but then when I was watching like some clips of it, I was like, saw it back to back. I was like, oh, that's cool. Like that's the design language of the people that did the thing in this world. Like that was cool. That was cool.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. I mean, I think the pre-crime set looks great. And then they have the control panel in there, which is really interesting. It's actually like an actual, so like all the hand motions and stuff he's doing, it's an actual like operating system that he's interacting with. It's this it's this thing designed by this group, Oblong Industries. This guy John Underkoffler, which you can see in some of the special features, like talks a lot about it. And Spielberg had asked him like if they had something with like a future computer with no keys or mouse or whatever. And it's actually a thing they were developing called G-Speak. It's a spatial operating environment. And so it was the first ever like this. And it's really interesting. It's when you look at it now, 20 years later, I'm like, this is very like impractical. Like this isn't something that people would have in their homes. It might, but they weren't really like, when they were describing it, they weren't really describing it for that purpose. They were describing it more like as certain industries might really benefit from this, because it's basically like you have these gloves on just like Tom Cruise does, and you have like a board in front of you, like a board screen in front of you, like a table, and then a projection up in front of you. And basically like there's different gestures and movements. Like think about like the different gestures you use on your iPhone to like make certain things happen on your iPhone. It's kind of like that same thing, but just like in 3D space with your hands. And so like you can move stuff around. He was showing like a mapping environment where with like a 3D mapping environment to like explore this I guess 3D mapping of this mountain range or whatever, so you can move around it and then go into the valleys and like move it around. And
for something like that existing then, that really is cool.
One of the things he showed was like he actually had the movie up there, the Minority Report movie, and he was taking elements out of like the kid on the little merry-go-round thing from the first murder. Like, so he takes that kid out and puts him on like the table screen, and it's like a live picture of that kid over and over. And then he takes like the ship and like takes it out and puts it on there. And so he's showing like you can do like some video editing this way.
So is this an AR VR system back then? Like, is that what it? Yeah. That's really cool. So, because I mean,
it's basically just like a system built where like you're doing the thing that was very impractical to me is like you're doing so much with your arms like up in the air, and I'm like, no one's gonna want to do this for more than like an hour tops, because your arms are gonna be dead.
It was quite funny the way. I agree that like that to me, that was the like actually hearing that it actually is an operating system that was developed around that time. That's really cool. I didn't know that.
I thought so too. Like, so the gestures and stuff Tom Cruise is doing, this guy taught him how to do it. Like
that's interesting.
He's actually like interacting with a screen like in the way that you would with this system.
Yeah. Well, the reason I was asking is because that, like not to keep going back, but the Apple Vision Pro's like user interface really is it's tracking your hands. So, in a obviously enclosed environment, but it's like you can pin stuff like for the multi-purpose aspect of not having to have physical monitors. You can tell it, okay, this wall is this wall is this.
Right.
If I look over here, I want to see the weather. And then you walk out of the room, walk back in, and it's still technically like it tracks where you are,
which is cool, really cool.
Yeah. It's a little different. The thing, honestly, the thing that made it the goofiest to me was the hand motions. It was just like, I'm not even saying that the operating system itself, it felt so performative, and that's the point. I think that was the point. It's to be a memorable scene,
and so like here's the thing that makes it work is like Tom Cruise looks really cool doing it.
He looks way cooler than anyone else would. That's for sure.
Like he's got those movements down. Like it's
like the run.
He's he's selling it, baby. Like he was doing it, and I was like, dude, I want one of those control panels. That's really cool.
But
practically, I'm like, I don't know how practical this operating system is really, but
Yeah.
it does make it does make it more like, it doesn't look as goofy as like the AR headsets look with the hand motions, because like he's actually like interacting with a space that you can see, that
Right.
everyone can see instead of
Right. He's not
just
just walking around and yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool, and it's an actual thing that they used that was being
Yeah.
developed at that time. So I don't know if that technology has been like actually used in some industries or not. It seemed like it was pretty like still early on in their development of it. But
Yeah. I would imagine for sure it plays into the AR VR
yeah,
market.
and I was also thinking about too. I recently, for that AI movie draft, I rewatched Her with Joaquin Phoenix, and he like, have you seen that movie? It's a great movie.
I want to say yes.
You should rewatch it if you have. It's a great movie.
But I think I just know about it. Yeah.
But he's like playing a video game at one point, and he's like making the guy walk in the video game by like doing this hand motion, like a back and forth with his fingers, for people that are listening and not
I don't
watching.
think I've seen it.
And so, but but it's not like all of this stuff like with his hands all everywhere. He's just like, kind of like leaning forward on his couch and doing it like just like this, like, very lazily.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but so yeah, I mean, there's other movies that have done like similar stuff. But yeah. Spielberg wanted Cruise to have those gloves on though, because he felt like it would be too much for people to see him without some sort of device that was doing it, and not just his hands by themselves. But the gloves look cool too, so that helps too.
They lit up on the ends too. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great. I think the design of this is really good. The containment chambers are cool. Spielberg talked about how like they're basically like stamped with M for murder, in the form of having the scene of their murder play out and right over their faces over and over, which was like, okay, that's cool. The commercials of the future were really cool. They were developed by an ad group called Three Ring Circus. He kind of another third party kind of hiring out them to do this, and yeah, I mean, they like extrapolate on pop-up ads and intelligent ads like to the nth degree.
I was laughing at the personality of the personalization of it.
The Gap one is the best. Like,
oh yeah, how are those assorted tank tops working out?
Yeah, that was great. And I loved that. Which one of the things that came up in like the reception of it was people were like, "Oh, the crass like, product placement and stuff takes away from the artistic." And I was like, "No, that's part of who is writing this at this? What critic is writing at this time that it's just crass product placement that takes away from the artistic vision?" I'm like, "No, that is the artistic vision. It's like." Yeah, it's commenting on that.
I mean, they're making money off of it,
right?
But it's still a statement.
Yeah,
like that it's not great. Yeah, that's
I thought
funny.
That was a really like short-sighted, dumb criticism, but
yeah, that's not interrogating far enough what the intention was,
right?
But at the same time, to defend that, I can see.
Yeah,
I know. I don't. A good example of that to me, where it just feels incredibly dumb and out of place, is like, to go just totally random, the Barbie movie. Like the whole chase. Have you seen Barbie?
Yeah.
The chase scene in the Chevy. I want to say Chevy Cruze. It's the SUV that she has. It just felt like a Chevy ad in the middle of the movie. Yeah. It was weird. That didn't feel. That felt conflicted to me. That took me out of the story. This explicitly was trying to be.
It's commenting on it
both at the same time. It was a product placement,
right?
But it was commenting on that, which is kind of funny that ads paid to be in that.
Yeah, which like in my research, people were like, the production never said if like those people paid to have their products placed in the movie. And
Oh.
I mean, we know they did. Like,
Yeah.
we
I mean,
we
if
know
you
how
see
it works.
yeah, if you see a Coke can framed in the shot behind you, they paid for it to be there.
Yeah.
None of it's incidental.
Right.
And they would have been sued if they hadn't
Yeah.
had the, who knows.
The other big design thing is the DC zoning actually doesn't allow for like skyscrapers in like the main city limits. And so like all of like the futuristic big city stuff is like across the Potomac River. If you notice when you're watching the movie, there'll be like shots where it's like White House and all the normal stuff, but then like across the river is like the crazy futuristic city with tall buildings and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's cool. That's what they did. Which all that's like added in digitally, obviously. But
that is cool attention though.
Yeah.
I feel like the tempting thing would just be futurism everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
With no attention to that kind of that's encouraging detail attention.
Yeah. And yeah, so one of the funny things I thought was that Spielberg keeps like all these props in his vault. So like the Alex McDowell was like showing you, and this is, I don't know how many years later it is that they made like these interviews, but he was like, oh yeah, Spielberg had all these in his vault and was like going through all the like gizmos and gadgets that are in the movie that he says all came out of that think tank that Spielberg did.
Wow, that's cool.
The wood balls came out of that, of like, okay, which I thought was a really fun idea. You know, there's the short exposition of why they're wood. It's because they have a grain and you can't replicate that. I was like, oh, that's a really great idea. And they look cool too. I talked about the gloves for crews, the light scanners, the brain light scanners for the precogs, which is something that they said might be developed. It's something that is possible to be developed or whatever.
Well, yeah, the whole idea of like a brain interfacing with the brain, that's how it's done,
right?
And then the frontier of that idea is getting inside the brain,
right, with
neurons. But yeah, that's pretty interesting attention as well. Like the brain, what are they? I can't think of the phrase for it. Just a brain interface, basically, to connect with your brain and use computers.
Yeah, and I think that is a thing. Like, like that people have, like, because it's not even like, oh, where are my eyes looking, but it's actually like reading your brain waves to move like a cursor around and stuff. Like that's a thing now.
Yeah, well,
for people with disabilities, they're starting to use that sort of thing.
Yeah, I haven't seen any I guess recent follow up with it, but
I've seen videos of it recently. Yeah,
the first Neuralink patient, I saw an article about it because he played Civ 6, and he's like, this is because he's been using the leading eye tracking software on brain interface stuff and he's like, it's so amazing. I'm like just thinking and it's clicking.
Yeah,
but yeah, the other side of that though that has had a pretty interesting advancement recently is actually on iPhones. There is a visual, like I turned it off because it's not useful to me the way I use my phone. But if you set it on like your desk, you can set it up and it will try, and you can like look and blink and it will click, and like for something that's just scanning my face, that's amazing. For that level of access. So that kind of stuff's come a long way.
Yeah, for sure. Which, speaking of the eyes, you got the IdentaScan retinal scanners, which is like all over the place. And then the little spiders are basically like a mobile version of that, of the retinal scanners, which those are really cool. Those are designed well, I think. I think DreamWorks Animation kind of developed those. Which, they look fun. The non-lethal weapons, you've got I love when
I like that too.
the six stick. Like,
The six stick was funny because they said it, and I was like, I think they said it before something happened.
Yeah,
And that was
like,
funny.
When you think about it, it's like, yeah, I guess that would kind of incapacitate somebody. Like if they're like uncontrollably vomiting, like you really can't like run away at that point. You can't keep running.
That's true. You know, for as authoritarian and awful as the rest of the film is, those weapon choices are surprisingly nice. Like, I mean, you know,
yeah. I'm not sure that like a six stick is any less invasive than a taser, but
I mean, yeah, no, that's true. It's probably more invasive than a taser.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking specifically the guns. That whole gun scene
the sonic boom gun
pretty sweet,
is really cool.
Yeah, he just flips it around with charges.
The way that it like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
such a good
it's kind
design.
of felt like a revolver, trick shot
got like
situation.
Wild West like shootout kind of feel to the like when he like runs and grabs it. And it's like boom, boom. Yeah, really cool. The drug apparatus was like a carefully designed thing so that people could see like the little bubble get sucked in, so they know like, oh, now he's inhaled the drug. That was a cool little design. The jetpacks, which Spielberg had wanted to do jetpacks in a movie ever since he had seen one at the '84 Olympics in LA. Apparently someone like came in and landed on some sort of jetpack thing. Yeah. He said it was like incredibly super loud, which in '84 makes sense. But yeah, the maglev vehicles, kind of alternate fuel source inspired stuff. The eye remover thing is based on an automatist tool. That was a frightening scene.
Ooh. Oh yeah. It was already uncomfortable enough. Like you know what was going to happen.
But then like you get the little metal things pulling back his eyelids. I was like, ugh.
Yeah, that was bad too. But I was more so saying like that's an uncomfortable scene already because okay, his eyes are about to get drilled out and replaced. Yeah. And then you find out that the guy is like a criminal that he put away.
Yeah. What do you think about the stuff in the fridge? Like, why was there a good sandwich and a moldy sandwich?
I don't know.
Was it just to mess with them? Like, why are they both in treatment
there? That was the, I wondered about that because that was just like such a comical descent into just, he's already got his eyes operated on.
Mm-hmm.
He can't see. He eats the moldy sandwich. He drinks the lunky milk, and then he drinks the ice from the. I'm assuming that was like an organ transport box with ice in it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
It just was. I don't know why they did that. Probably to mess with him because they didn't like him too much, but they helped him.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. But I was like, man, they really screwed this guy over. But yeah, that whole shot too, like. Where he gets in the ice bath and like the spiders are trying to get in was really cool. Like I enjoyed the way that was shot, like overhead. It was kind of gimmicky but enjoyable to watch, And they did they used the previs stuff to like map out where how the crane would move, which is, it's a camera on a crane.
Oh yeah.
So they were able to like, it took out a lot of like work, extra like work and test shots and stuff to be able to like map out exactly where the crane and camera needed to move for that shot. So that was cool. Yeah, I mean, I think the only like big set piece that we haven't really talked a ton about would be like the hoverpack chase. Which they shot on a backlot at Warner Studios. Another case where they used the previs to map it all out. I think I talked about that. And then it's basically just like a bunch of dudes on cables like being zipped around, and even like they did some stuff with the camera where they had like the camera on on a cable like above the actors, like moving up with them, which that's cool.
Mhm.
That's cool. It's all cool stuff to see, like
Yeah.
how how they're making the movie magic happen, behind the scenes. But yeah, so Rydstrom does a great job with the sound. The John Williams score was interesting. He talked about how it was very different than a lot of his other stuff. It's more, he talked about it being more felt than heard, which makes sense because I don't think there's any like really, and I think he said this, I think there's only like a few themes in the whole, like melody themes in the whole thing for like, and it's all for like for his son there's a theme, for the wife there's a theme, and then for Anne Lively there's a theme. But the Anne Lively one is that like kind of haunting, theme with the woman's vocals and stuff. But other than that, he said it's more just kind of like tension building, suspenseful, like there's not really like a tonality to it or a melody. It's just kind of like a driving, like environmental score, which makes sense. It kind of like it doesn't really stand out, but that's probably a good thing in this movie.
Yeah.
So I mean, really, like Spielberg starts the post-production for this, and he already has like one eye on Catch Me If You Can. He's like he's kind of like on a 3-movie spurt. Like he started doing these, like he'll like take a couple years off, and then he'll have like a spurt of like 3 movies. So this phase is like he did AI, Minority Report, and Catch Me If You Can before like taking a short break again. So yeah, he's working on it. So one thing that did come out was that Goldman and Shusett, who Goldman, if you remember, is the guy that bought the rights to the movie originally, and commissioned it to Cohen, the writer. He claimed that Scott Frank and John Cohen's script included some of their Goldman and Shusett's initial ideas for the movie, but their claim was dismissed by the WGA, the Writers Guild of America. And they did get executive producer credits, so it's not like they just like said screw these guys, But yeah, it releases on June 21st, 2002. Good summer blockbuster. Ended up making $358 million on what budget? You said you were going to remember that number.
102 million.
Yeah,
because he wanted to keep it. He wanted to keep it. I specifically remember because he wanted to keep it under 100.
Yeah,
I don't know why specifically that was the goal, but it went over.
Yeah,
went 2 over.
Yeah,
so just 2 million.
2 million over. Man,
chump change.
That stinks.
Yeah.
So really, this didn't make a ton of money for what they expected. It didn't make a ton of money. And I almost wonder if with AI, one of the things that in my research I came across was that the marketing wasn't played into the mystery of it, because they were relying so much on the Stanley Kubrick Spielberg project thing.
Yeah.
And so they really played into the mystery, but then like people didn't know what to expect. And so they were going into the movie and then being let down because they weren't really set up for success. And so I wonder if a similar thing happened with this movie, where people, it was just kind of being sold on Spielberg and Tom Cruise. And then people like really didn't know what to expect going in, and maybe it didn't quite meet what they were expecting. And so, but yeah, you would expect a Spielberg, Tom Cruise summer sci-fi blockbuster to make more than this, honestly. But yeah,
was this what time frame was this box office? Was this like,
so that's a worldwide box office,
like total?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I don't even know. I can vamp for a second and pull up the box office mojo to see what the domestic was. But yeah, that's the worldwide box office that it made eventually, after
Yeah.
it ran here and then overseas. So let me pull this up. Let's see. Yeah, 350. So it made 132 domestic. So it really just like barely made back its its budget domestically, which is never like a good sign. But this AI was a similar thing, and it feels like one of those things where it's kind of like AI and this movie feel like they're more well respected and reclaimed now than they were at the time. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but most reviews of this were generally positive. Like people liked the cast, they liked the rhythm of the movie, which is a great part of the movie. Like Spielberg really keeps the rhythm going strong.
Yeah.
Like you never feel like you never feel like bored or like waiting like okay, come on, let's get back to it. Like it really like keeps a good rhythm. One French publication, Positif, called it Spielberg's best work, which I think is, I guess everybody has their favorite Spielberg, but I don't think anybody would say this is his best work. I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't say. I think Jaws is his best.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
don't know how you compete. It's such a good.
It's still
so
my
good.
favorite. That's why it's sitting here over my shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got the Jaws shark on one shoulder and Tom Cruise on the other here on the video.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not watching, I always have like the Blu-ray case on my shelf behind me. Yeah, there were some detractors. People said he was like trying to do too much and say too much and spread a little thin, which I understand that criticism, but yeah, I mean, it's mostly positive review, but it's not like people aren't like raving about it. It only got one Oscar nomination for sound editing, which I don't know. I feel like production design was really good. They should have gotten something for that at least.
Yeah, I feel like it deserved. Yeah, that would have been a contender.
But yeah, I guess sci-fi movies are even today more like technical category movies. So, hello again. Do you know how you can really support the show for free in just a few minutes or less? That's right. Just leave a rating and review on Spotify and Apple, or wherever you listen that might allow for ratings and reviews. These really help the visibility of the podcast. In fact, just hit that pause button right now and drop the review right now. And then you can get back to the show. I'd greatly appreciate it. Okay. I trust that you went and left that rating and review now. Back to the show. Yeah, let's get into a little bit of the weeds of this movie, I guess, if you will. So one of the things that is kind of like sitting around the atmosphere of this movie when it came out was its kind of crossover with the societal issues of the time. So Spielberg, this is a quote from Spielberg, who was kind of commenting on this, this movie and society at the time. He said, quote, "George Orwell's prophecy really comes true. Big Brother is watching us now. The little privacy we have now will be completely evaporated in 20 or 30 years because technology will be able to see through walls, through rooftops, into the very privacy of our personal lives and into the sanctuary of our families. These violations will be to the detriment of society," unquote. And that's really, really apt because, and here's why, because 9 months prior to the release of this was 9/11. And then, a month later in October 2001 was the Patriot Act was passed, which allowed for the arrest and detention of men charged with suspected desire for terrorist involvement. Without a trial, they could be detained. And just collection of personal info from the entire population by the government. And so it's very and Spielberg was interested in this movie and made this movie before all this happened. So it's just one of those things where the timing couldn't be more right of like exploring these themes, you know, right when they're most applicable. You couldn't have like set it up better, really. It just really incredible that he makes this movie. 9/11 happens, the Patriot Act, and then this movie comes out the next summer, and it's like exploring all these ideas really about the the place of the government and of you know uh, policing and all that, and in society, and digging into our privacy, and is it okay to detain people for suspected involvement,
Yeah.
Thought
crime. I mean, that's a.
Yeah.
I mean, the answer is no.
Right.
I would say. Yeah, it's like
Well, let me read this from before you say that. So
okay.
So in June 2002, Spielberg told the New York Times this. He said, quote, "Right now, people are willing to give away a lot of their freedoms in order to feel safe. They're willing to give the FBI and the CIA far-reaching powers to, as George W. Bush often says, rout out those individuals who are a danger to our way of living. I am willing to give up some of my personal freedoms in order to stop 9/11 from ever happening again. But the question is, where do you draw the line? How much freedom are you willing to give up? That is what this movie is about." In another publication, the Daily Telegraph, he said, "My movie, which was more fiction a year ago, is suddenly becoming less fiction." And then a final quote I had in a 2012 interview, he said, 9/11 changed a lot for me, and my films did grow darker after 9/11. So I think the world has a great impact on how it colors my movies. I think that's a good sign. It just means I'm changing by being aware of what's happening. And so I want to read those quotes just before we comment more, because I think it is good to hear, like, for the conversation, Spielberg, the way Spielberg was kind of like thinking about it. And he's like, I don't know, he's thinking about it very fairly. Like, okay, like, what would I give up? I would give up a lot to not have something like 9/11 happen again, but where is the line? And that is what the movie's exploring. But yeah, what were you going to say?
Well, I guess the primary issue when discussing these types of things is there's always language that concerns me. Like what was the basically the idea of danger to our way of life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like 9/11, that's a danger to everyone, and the people on the plane, the pilots, the civilians. Like that's a very real and present danger. That's horrible. That's
right.
Dangerous. The problem is when that definition gets changed, and you're a threat to our way of life when you do X, and it's just it feels the history repeating itself kind of deal is the dangerous bad thing happens, people get scared, and then are willing to, for the sake of protecting from something like that happening, give up freedom. And there's this very like libertarian mindset of, well,
yeah,
I have a right to privacy. That's not libertarian, maybe. And I agree with that to a point. But there's always ends of the extreme. Like the guy's driving through a agriculture checkpoint and like, I know my rights, you can't detain me. And it's like, the cops just sitting there like, I am, like, what, like, they're auditors. They're saying they're auditors of the system, but
Yeah.
they're kind of the aggressors trying to find,
Sure.
I don't know what they're looking for there.
Yeah.
That's a long answer to say, I understand the concern. Like, I understand
Mm-hmm.
the primary concern is, yes, we don't want bad things to happen.
Right.
That's, of course, everyone agrees. Where people start to disagree is, well, what do we do to prevent those things?
Yeah.
And when the answer is give more and more information on ourselves to the government and more freedoms are taken away, it gets murky, specifically because it never stays the thing currently.
Yeah. And
even just to say, sorry,
go ahead.
Even the thing currently, like about the idea of the Patriot Act, right, is rooted in all kinds of problematic things of like racism, of oh well you're this nationality, you could be your, and it just leads back to things like the Japanese internment camps, and it's like that's some of the darkest things in our country, right? And so it just leads to that kind of, we get to this point where we think we're a civilized society, and then, oh well, we need to lock up everyone who looks like this because of this danger,
right?
And that's where it starts to get really scary in our world,
right?
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting, here's why I think this movie, like the way it plays with it, is so interesting. It's because they choose something we can all agree with like we wanting to stop.
Yeah.
Like, let's just go with murder. Let's forget all the other things. Like they scrap all the other crimes that the precause could possibly see and say, let's just focus on murder. Because it's kind of like picking the Nazis as like your bad guy. It's like no one's going to sympathize with or root for the Nazis. Like it's a safe bad guy. And so here, like, it's like, okay, let's just go with murder. Everyone can agree that murder is no bueno. And so, like, what if we could say, like, we can stop all murder? Like, isn't that a good thing? Like, wouldn't that be wonderful if we could go 5 years and there's no murders in our whole city? And the initial thought is, well, yeah, that would be phenomenal. So all we have to do is exploit these people that had druggy parents, and also arrest people and keep them in, I guess, perpetually in these pods without any trial. And it's like, wait a second, what? But yeah, I mean, so that it is the interesting thing, because the thing that Spielberg talked about is like he might be behind something that could guarantee 100% success, and I can understand that. But like if this system has like the tiniest fraction of a percent that's a flaw, it's like it throws the whole thing like against the wall. Like so it's kind of playing like a moral, like what if game. Like, so if we could guarantee 100% like flawlessness with this system, and the result is, you know, that there's no murder, it's basically saying like, can you submit to like a utilitarian view of this moral quandary? The ends justify the means. There's no more murder, so that makes it okay. And you do have to have like a utilitarianism, like you have to buy into that to say that this is okay. But I don't buy into utilitarianism, so like, so I don't think the ends justify the means. So I think that even if this thing were 100% accurate, I don't think I could say that I'm okay with it. I don't know how you feel about it, but yes, they're detaining people that were going to commit a murder.
Mhm.
But yeah, even if it's 100% accurate and they are only getting people that really were about to commit a murder, does that make it right and okay? And I think that's an interesting
Yeah.
thing to think through.
Yeah, it's almost two separate. It's almost two separate things to me, though, because
Sure.
it's like the realization that someone's going to commit the murder.
Mhm.
That's interesting because like you can see how that could be applicable to like just stop it, but then it doesn't just stop it. It goes so far down this like
Yeah.
authoritarian nightmare kind of deal where they're not there's no trial, you're immediately guilty because you were thinking of doing it or you were going to do it because we proved you were going to do it, and they just lock you up and put you in this stasis state. Like
Yeah.
that it's two different types of invasion or two different types of problem, and like I could see the argument for the first of like, okay, well we can tell the future with 90% accuracy. Doesn't it benefit us to stop? Like, in other words, kind of football tackle the person before they do it, and then
Yeah.
maybe, I don't know, rehabilitate or something, right? Like it's
Yeah.
especially if it's not premeditated. I'm not saying it's okay
Right.
to not premeditated murder, but the point is, this isn't some kind of nefarious plan. This is a bad situation that we can prevent.
Yeah.
I can see the allure of a person saying, we can fix this, we can do this, and then this horrible system coming in and saying,
Right.
okay, well, we can prevent it, and now we're just going to
Yeah.
inhumanely punish these horrible deviants for eternity because we proved they were going to do a crime. Yeah.
And so the question is because here's what we can sit here and say, okay, what is the best way to do it? Like, just stop them and rehabilitate them. Yes. But I think what's interesting is, we can question like, okay, why did they write it as that this is what happens? And I think the scary thing is we just, as humanity, have a tendency to do that sort of thing. Like, we have the tendency for systems to come in and make something way worse than it had to be.
Yeah.
And I think that the way that it plays out here is, who's to say it wouldn't turn out that way, even if it started off with the best of intentions, of like, hey, it's just cheaper to just keep these guys, to not invest a bunch of time and money into trying to like rehabilitate these people so that because we can't guarantee that they won't murder again. So we might as well just like put them in these pods,
Yeah.
until they die off or whatever, And so it's like, it's almost inevitable that a system would come into place that's inhumane in some way, just because of like the cycle of history.
Yeah. I mean, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. I just feel like the system that they have is like not really any different than the death penalty, and it's the death penalty for a crime that you didn't even commit yet. And I'm just like, that just feels really weird to me. I don't know. I just
it does feel strangely,
but it's like
cautionary as well. Like in other words, okay, if someone committing murder and the answer is if the punishment for someone committing murder like that is the death penalty, like that's their societal standard,
right?
That would feel, I don't know if that would feel more oppressive, but the point to me there is that would feel almost more sure in the system. Like basically, you're done, you're gone. This is almost like oddly cautious in a way because it's like you could undo the imprisonment, which is what happens in the end. I'm not saying it's good.
Yeah.
It's obviously still horrible.
No, yeah,
but
that's interesting to think about.
It's not as final.
Yeah, like why are they keeping all these people like alive? Is an interesting question. Is it like oh, it's the future and we're like above the death penalty now, and
Oh, maybe.
so like this is what we do now, and it's like, well, how is this different than the death penalty? Like they're
Yeah.
still like, you're still taking away all of their humanity.
Hmm.
But like, I guess you could reverse it, but like they don't believe that they're ever going to reverse it.
That's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not. I mean, maybe like Dr. Henneman and Burgess knew that there was like possibilities that people were in there that weren't necessarily going to commit the murder, but yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. And the other side I should say to this is, I'm speaking as someone who like has never, had someone close to me murdered. And so,
Yeah.
I can't speak to like that experience of like, do I don't know. I don't know how I would feel, and if that were my experience, I might feel differently if I had
Yeah.
someone close to me that was murdered, and like, yes, if we could 100% prevent murders, then yes, would do anything you can to prevent it. So I think that perspective should be taken into account too, because I don't know. Yeah, like if you can say like with 100% accuracy that these visions that these precogs have show you this someone that's going to commit a murder, and there's no way that there's any other possibility. That's definitely what's going to happen unless someone intervenes. Then, yeah, like ideally, you would stop it without like putting them in this like these death chamber cemeteries, hall
Yeah.
of containment cemetery, basically. But I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting. It's like, could we improve upon the system? Maybe, but our system,
That's the trap, though. That's the trap.
our
It all.
systems, I don't know. Our human systems, unfortunately, tend towards corruption.
Yeah. I think
So
that's. Yeah. I think that's maybe.
maybe the movie's commenting on that in a way. Maybe
Yeah.
not even like consciously, but just like thinking about how the story would play out. It just kind of ended up there, and because that's where we end up usually when we build systems.
Yeah. And just even. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit trail, but something that I just read the book The Color of Law, and it discusses the history of, I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yes, I've heard of it, and
Yeah.
I haven't read it, but yeah, I know
Yeah.
what it's
Well,
about.
I would really encourage, I've encouraged a lot of people to read it. I think it's a very important thing to at least be aware of. Not and everyone's aware of it,
Sure.
but the pervasiveness and the overwhelming creativity that people put into being specifically cruel, as it surrounds to non-white people in housing in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
It's not basically everything I learned about that as a younger person is incorrect or coded in a way that's half truth or like, well, this cultural truth is like, no, it's really not the case. And so what I mean is that that's just one example, right?
Mm-hmm.
To pull from history of a great example of how horrible systems can be, for simple things like where people can buy houses and where people can live and where people can eat, and so and that's not even people who have done anything wrong, right? That's just for who they are. And so you get further down this thought process, and it's like, well, but the people that are going to do these murders are bad because they're going to murder. And it's like, it's so tricky to, I mean, we don't have that ability, right? But we have I guess next best thing is surveillance to prevent these kinds of things from happening. And definitely think the text of the movie is against that, like
Yeah.
explicitly. But it is a tempting thing. It is a tempting thing to be like, well, if the system just didn't do these things, it would be good. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't think so. That's not what the movie's saying, and that's not what I personally think.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because like the way that like surveillance plays into everything is, you're basically at risk of being surveilled by the precogs at any minute. But also there's these retinal scanners everywhere
Yeah.
that and I think it's comments very aptly on things that start off as like, okay, there's surveillance of this stuff so that we can prevent bad things from happening, but then inevitably, like, here comes corporate America, and now the side effect is I have like 10 million election texts coming through my phone last week, and like
Yeah.
from who knows who got my number, my phone number, and then like constant ads when I'm trying to see like what my friends and family are up to on social media, and like, it's just like in your face kind of, it's
Yeah.
it's a little different because it's like your data is being surveilled and used to target you in certain ways, and it's not like life threatening, but
Right.
it's certainly like invasive. And so there's a degree to which like these things that we start with good intentions inevitably turn on us for some reason.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's like sci-fi is just like so good at exploring, is like, how do our advancements turn on us in the end? Like how do we always end up, with these things made with like the intention of bettering life turning against us? It goes back to like the opening of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Like, yes, the monkeys are evolving, they're discovering tools, let's use them to bash each other's heads in.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. And then ultimately, like, it's the same thing with how, it's we inevitably end up in this place where these things made with the intention of the betterment of life, like, end up being used, for evil. And so, yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
we haven't even talked about like how these precogs are like just exploited to the end,
Oh, yeah.
to the nth degree. Like, their humanity is taken away from them, and that's why I love, like, once he gets Agatha out and she's like, is it now? And like, she's,
Yeah.
you can see she obviously has this kind of like otherworldly, vision. She, like, what I did love about the mall scene, apart from the way it looks, is like how she's like leading him through everything because she's foreseeing it, and
Yeah.
she's like,
that was cool.
like, wait behind the balloons, and it's
Grab the umbrella.
yeah, it's great. All that is really great. Yeah, well written and well executed. But yeah, just like seeing her humanity was good. Like, it was good for the, like, what the movie was doing, because you see someone that's being exploited, but then you see like, oh, she's a real human being. Like, is it okay?
Yeah.
Is it okay? And that's a whole nother discussion, right? Is it okay to exploit these three people to prevent, the hundreds or thousands of murders that might have taken place over 5 years?
Yeah.
And like,
Right.
the
kind of
the
a
utilitarian mindset would say yes, absolutely. But is that the right philosophy? Like, more,
kind of a trolley problem-ish thing. I mean, they're not dying, but basically dying.
I mean, they have no rights. They have no,
Right.
for all intents and purposes, like, their humanity has been taken away from them completely.
Yeah.
They can't have discussions with each other. They're just like constantly laying in this milky soup,
Man
sending
can brush their
visions.
own teeth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And I think part of that is, I mean, the basic question is it okay to take away people's rights, for other people? Maybe that's a sloppy way of wording it, but in certain cases, yeah. Like, I mean, I don't think prisons need to not exist, right?
Sure.
But
Hmm.
we could and should have very frequent discussions and questions about
Hmm.
why and how long and who are put in those.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because again, like you kind of mentioned this earlier, but like our systems tend to have a way to find the most unethical, profit motivated ways
Yeah.
to make those kinds of things work.
Sure.
And it's like, you start with something simple, like, yes, people that do crimes should be put in prison. And then it becomes, well, technically they could be working and then we're making money off the things they make. And then just
Yeah.
leads to very uncomfortable, wrong things in our society. And so then the way that's portrayed in the movie is obviously more dramatic, or maybe less dramatic, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a good
Yeah.
picture
Honestly, it all comes down to not all of it, but some of these questions come down to like your moral philosophy. Because at the end of the day, if you do subscribe to like a utilitarianism for your moral philosophy, then like all of these things are perfectly okay under that philosophy.
Yeah.
Because the ends do justify the means. So if you have to exploit 3 people and take away their humanity to prevent the murder of thousands of people, the utilitarianists like will weigh those two and say like the prevention of the murders outweighs this, so this is the best possible route to take. And I just don't subscribe to that sort of moral philosophy. So maybe someone's listening that does, and they're like, they don't understand where I'm coming from. But I subscribe to a moral philosophy that no one's like humanity should be taken away, even in the way that is being done. I'm not talking about like, oh, we shouldn't, like, I don't know, like there's all sorts of societal ways you can think about this. Like, yes, I am willing to be taxed more so that people don't have to go hungry. Like, I'm not talking about that sort of thing, but I'm talking about like these precogs like are not allowed to be human at all for the sake of.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the mindset of like, even criminals have human rights,
right?
Like, it doesn't, and one of those basic rights is not being subdued by chemicals against your own will. Like, I don't know it, but the point in the movie is that they have zero autonomy.
Yeah.
And they've done nothing wrong is the other part of this. They aren't even bad people. Like, not that it would be okay if they were, but the point is they're just babies of people that gave them abilities.
Well,
so,
the whole twist around, we haven't even really talked about a ton about the whole like twist around Saito's character, Burgess. Like he's the one behind it. He does like that. Really, like the writing of that, I think, is like really ingenious. Like, he has seen the vision. He hires this dude. He sees what the vision is going to be. He recreates it. Like, oh, that's great. That's just like great writing to me.
Yeah.
So I loved that. That whole like reveal of what was actually happening and how he was behind it and whatnot. I should say one of my quibbles though was when we already know all of that stuff, but then John Anderton like tells us all over again over the phone to Burgess as he's like looking for him. I'm like, that was the one.
Yeah.
That was the one time that I was like, why am I getting redundant exposition? Explaining all of this that's already been explained. Like,
yeah, like I feel like that comes down to just not trusting the audience. I don't know.
But it's literally like been explained and shown to us. Like it's not like they kind of like show you and you're supposed to figure it out, but then they like explain it. It's like, no, it's literally been explained by Burgess and shown in like not the visions, but like shown what the visions were seeing actually. Like we know what happened. We don't need John Anderton to tell us over the phone all over again. But anyways, that was another quibble I had of like, man, that's another reason. That's another like quibble I have that keeps me from like putting this in like the upper echelon of Spielberg movies of like, why did they leave that in there? Because usually Spielberg is good about like taking unnecessary stuff out of movies. And that just felt like, I guess they were like, we have to have something happening while he's looking for him. So let's just have Anderton like explain what he knows to him over the phone while he's looking for him. But I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. That scene felt kind of long, and also the lady fainting. Yeah. When Hunter and I laughed at that. That was so over the top. Like, oh no, it's him.
I laughed when Laura throws the eyeball down on the organ and it plays a note. I was like,
that was funny too.
Which, by the way, that's my other quibble. This is a legit like quibble. Is why in the world does his eye still grant him access to everything?
Yeah, that seems like
even,
especially
so like even if you give the explanation of like the first time, it's like it's pre-crime. They never like don't apprehend someone. So like it never occurred to him that they should like turn off his like eye access to everything. And so like the first time he gets in, it's like great. But then after that, it's still like she's able to use his eye again. Like, so like, go see Mr. Organ Man, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, I think that's an oversight in the writing of like, why does this, I don't know. You can kind of roll with it. I did in the movie, but afterwards I was like, why does his eye still give access to everything? I just didn't.
Yeah, one of my friends told me about this. I might misrepresent it, but it's called refrigerator logic, where it's like basically it doesn't hold up to the most intense scrutiny, right? Like sitting down and talking to it for hours, but it'll get you'll get from the theater home, shower, go to the fridge to get a snack, and go, oh,
yeah,
you know, like it'll get you that far, and that's kind of like a standard. I don't remember what that actually is, if it's like a standard or if that's actually a criticism of the logic. I know the term and what it means, but
you know, it's one of those things. So that I see as like just a quibble that like doesn't necessarily like change my opinion fully on the film, like on the effectiveness on the film. It's more stuff with like I don't know, like the unnecessary exposition I think comes down to like to the writing being sloppy. So, and then like the way it's shot is like weird to me, and so like those are like more like serious criticisms. The whole like eye thing is just like a fun quibble to me that doesn't really change my opinion of the film a whole lot. Now, if it was like constantly stuff like that, then I'm like, okay, like I can't even like get into this movie because it's constantly like throwing stuff at me that doesn't make sense. But that's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess like we should touch on before we start wrapping up a little bit, like the Anderton character. Like, so one of the things that they changed from the novella is he has like this backstory with, you know, the trauma of losing his kid. Did all that stuff work for you?
Yeah, I feel like it did. Because it pretty solidified. It solidified him not only as someone who, because like one way that it might work is that they set it up, and you can kind of tell from the beginning that he doesn't love the system,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
But he wants to take it down,
Mhm.
right? That might show you that he is going to be a hero character or whatever.
Right.
But the way they set it up is he is not only thriving at his job using the system, he emotionally supports it because
Right.
of his, experience, which I would say my quibble with that is I'm guessing that what was supposed to be implied by what happened was that his son was killed. I didn't know if it was like a kidnapping.
Yeah. It seems
Or,
like he doesn't know.
Yeah, that wasn't like, I guess the intention, what you're supposed to take from that is his son was harmed.
Yeah.
But the slightly sloppiness of that is that it only works for explicitly murder. So I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Point is, he's emotionally invested in the system because of that trauma, regardless of whether it's the exact same thing. He doesn't want that to happen to other people. And so he fully supports and is thriving using the system, and only like snaps out of it when he realizes, wait, what? No,
wait a second.
I'm not
I'm
that guy.
John Anderton.
I would never do this. What's going on? So then he gets it flipped on him, and the system that he supports and in a lot of ways loves is going to crush him under it. And so then he's like, has to do something because for his own survival.
Yeah. And that's one of the things in the novella. He like, at one point he's having a conversation with someone and they're like, if you do this, you're going to mess up the whole system. It's kind of like the conversation he has with Burgess of like, what's it worth? It's kind of like the what's worth more, like your life or the existence of this system. And in the novella, he explicitly says, no, my life matters more because I'm a human being, which I thought was interesting. And that's kind of like along the lines of what I've been saying this whole time of like, no, like the system that prevents the murders is less important than the life of one individual human being being taken away, like, or exploited. And so, which doesn't really, Burgess ends up just taking his life and stuff. And so you don't really get that explicitly said in the movie, but it's kind of implied, which they do. For my problem with like the exposition in that one scene, most of the exposition is pretty like we said earlier, like played into the movie as like audience surrogate stuff that doesn't like feel like people just talking at you. And they do a lot of like showing instead of telling as well. Which
that I really like that.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think Anderton's trauma with his past life I think it works because of the way it culminates in that Leo Crow murder scene where he finally gets there. He's like confronting him. And I think Cruz really sells it. Like the breakdown of his realization of what's happening. Like it's like dawning on him as he like sees the pictures of the kids and sees, finds his son, in the pile. And so Cruz sells all that really well. And I think the movie really like, it's one of those things that Spielberg specifically does really well is efficient character building and making you feel invested in a character really like quickly and efficiently. And so like it really just takes that one hologram scene and you're invested in his character. And I think that's just like great storytelling and great character development. And it's something Spielberg just does over and over again. And in most of his movies is he just like gets you on board with a character so quickly. And makes it last the whole, gives you something you can hold on to for the whole movie.
Yeah.
And then, you get that scene with Agatha where she keeps saying like, this house was so full of love, and she gives like the whole like scenario of like what the son's life could have been. And it's really touching. Like if I were like just to view that scene on its own without having seen the movie, it would have kind of seemed corny or whatever. But in the context of the whole movie, it's really touching and moving. I thought it was really good. And yeah, I don't know. What did you think about that scene?
I mean, I thought it was. I mean, I recognize the emotional weight for the characters.
Yeah. I don't know. Whenever those things happen for me, I'm always like thinking of my own. Like I'll think of like my own kids, and
yeah. And I was gonna say
it's kind of hard not to like stop thinking about like his experience and think about mine, and then I'm moved because I'm thinking about what if scenarios for myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely know. I definitely know what you mean. In other ways, like any like medical stuff, I think of Hunter and like stuff we went through in the past, stuff like that. But it's like for me in that scene, it didn't connect with me in the sense that it confused. I don't know. It was her, psychic realization. I'll just call it psychic. I don't use the term there. That he was so loved, and kind of like begging the question, what changed? Because they weren't together anymore. That's kind of what I took from it. And then it also just worked because I knew it was like emotional for the characters, but it confused me that I guess she was seeing the Minority Report future of the kid.
Yeah.
Or maybe the future of their next kid. I don't know what the whole. Yeah. It just didn't work for me somewhere.
Interesting. Okay.
I acknowledge the emotional impact, and I think that it was good for the characters.
Yeah.
It just kind of confused me because I didn't understand.
Gotcha.
Functionally in the rules of the universe what she was doing, unless it was supposed to be that she was feeding them the Minority Report, but he was already like dead. So I don't know. It just
I could see that she really, you've never had her like reading a would-be future that can't exist because that person's already dead before. So I guess it seems strange in that point, but I think this is an example where like I wasn't even thinking about that and still hadn't until you just pointed that out. So like I just rolled with it and it worked for me. I guess.
Yeah, well, and I think what it was supposed to do for the characters was like give them a glimpse of what their life could have been like had this tragedy not happened,
and why they should get back together.
Yes.
Which is why the ending makes sense, because like the system's gone now, but now like they can start anew, sort of,
Yeah, and they don't need the system for that.
Yeah.
That's probably
the love that was in the house was enough, I guess, is kind of
right.
Like, you don't have to get revenge. You don't have to get, you don't have to like give your life away to this thing. You can have, it's enough to just like have love, in your house, in your own home, in the privacy of your own home, having love within that space is enough. Which I think is a beautiful message, I don't think the ending like just like knocks it out of the park with that. It's kind of like it felt abrupt to me. And
it kind of did, and it was just basically exposition,
which sometimes I'm okay with a sci-fi movie, but I'm okay with it when it like leaves things open-ended and like, I love a good sci-fi movie that leaves you with like more questions than answers. Like I love that. This isn't that kind of sci-fi movie, and I don't know, it's going for almost a sentimental ending that's just like kind of comes out of left field, like out of nowhere, and I don't know, that it's just one more like little thing that I'm like, man, if they would have just gotten that a little better, this would be
Yeah.
one of my favorite Spielberg movies. But
I was a fan of The Last Shot. I thought The Last Shot was really cool. The pullback out of the house.
I mean, the
slowly,
shot
and then flying up out. I don't know.
The shot
I know
looks
it's
cool.
like,
yeah,
I know it's like a relatively simple shot,
I don't,
especially with drones today.
I just don't know if like the movie left me with the feeling of like victory for these people that. And it could be because like you really only connect with Agatha and you don't really know anything about these twin guys.
Yeah.
But I think I don't know. I just feel like it's abrupt and it doesn't really. I don't know. I feel like there's a better ending out there to be written for this movie because it feels like it just jumps. Maybe that's what it is. It like you kind of wrap up the plot and then you just jump to these images of like
the future.
Yeah. Here's what's happening now with these characters, and it's like it's kind of emotionally feels emotionally disconnected in a way from the tempo you've just been experiencing. And I almost feel like a kind of just like cathartic like moment of victory and moment of like this cycle of like craziness finally ending would be a better ending of just like the catharsis of finally we're through it all and we can embrace and be together now, instead of like jumping into the future and it's like seeing them down the line. It's kind of emotionally disconnected from like the tempo and the pace of everything leading up to the end.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because I feel like you can have that ending of like we can now start our new life together, and the precogs can have their new life together without like a break from what you were just, because it is like kind of a relentless like 2 hours of like just constant like plot development and moving and action, and then it's like it stops and it throws you into the future. Well, you could have had that same ending, just attach it to the end of all that, and it might have been more emotionally resonant and cathartic, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Let's end with just our favorite, maybe our favorite like scenes or images or sequences. Like what was maybe one or two of your just like favorite things in the movie?
I did enjoy. I'm not trying to steal your your mall scene. I enjoyed the mall scene. I thought that was cool with her like leading them through.
Yeah.
I enjoyed what the techno club scene got to.
Yeah.
I didn't love there were a couple of things in there that I didn't love, but I liked the reverence shown to her, and then the realization that she really is, a precog, and the reverence, and then getting the information.
Oh yeah,
that was interesting. And the ball, like when he rolled the ball, across the desk.
I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, that felt very. There's probably a better way to phrase this. That felt very Nolan of like just tight.
Yes.
Integration of the concept into the dialogue.
Yes.
In a memorable, cool way.
Yeah.
It's
visual. It's like, it's a good analogy. It like, very good. Yeah. And I like that. I think that is something you might see in a Nolan movie. Yeah.
Yeah. It felt very Nolan.
Yeah.
And there's probably a more direct way of saying that, but his films usually have some kind of tight
exposition,
metaphor and reference of a thing in a tactile. It was just such a good. It was very the sound design of it rolling and then him catching it and then just it was good. That's probably my top scene.
Yeah, I think my favorite, which is odd. This is a little bit odd because it's not even it's something that Spielberg had like the vision for, but didn't actually like create himself. because I think my favorite thing in the movie is the visions. Like, and I've already went off on about those, but yeah, and even just the way that Cruz like works through them. You know what it reminded me of, because so in a sense he's basically like having to Sherlock Holmes these visions. Like he's having to like observe what like the details and figure out where it is based on deducing and out of these details of the visions he's seeing. But he's also like having to do these hand gestures, and have you ever watched the Sherlock series with Benedict Cumberbatch?
Yeah, it's been a bit.
So
yeah.
like, you know how like it'll pop up things on the screen and he'll like move them away, like these thoughts or these like of what might it be? No, it's not that, and he'll like brush it away, but it's like it actually like pops up, in CGI, like a word or whatever, and he'll like swipe it away. And it was like he's kind of doing that, but before this series came out. I wonder if like the Sherlock series pulled from I doubt it, but
yeah, I don't know.
But I don't know. I just made that connection of like going through a Sherlock Holmes style like art of detective deduction and like swiping things around and pulling things up, and he kind of does that. Like it's supposed to be like visualizations of what he's doing in his head in the show, but yeah, I just thought that was funny. An interesting connection. But yeah, love the visions, love the commercials and ads. Yeah, it's and I love the whole ending to the spider sequence where like they pull back the bandage and like open his eye. It's just like such a terrible vision, like visual, but but I love the way it looked and the way it was done.
No, I love the way it looked too. What are your thoughts about? I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but shouldn't he have lost his vision in that eye? Was that
maybe it was one of those things where usually you have to have them on for 24 hours, but you know how that medical stuff goes. It's like they overshoot that stuff just to be safe.
Yeah.
And
I thought the setup, I was like feeling smart about it, because the guy who said in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, I was like, okay, he's gonna lose vision in one eye.
But they never comment on it. So
they never comment on that.
Yeah. So
I guess
maybe he did lose vision in that eye, but they never say anything else about it. So
yeah. Also, the medicine that he did was very it went a different direction than Mission Impossible masks do for Tom Cruise in the future, but it was just as effective, apparently.
Well, not in the future. Mission Impossible, the first one has already come out at this point.
Well, I'm just thinking of the I guess I'm thinking of the most recent couple.
Yeah.
He's already been in one.
Yeah, that was in the original, I think, the whole mask thing. But yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like more to talk about with this movie, which is speaks to the sci-fi-ness of it all. But I think we've spent enough of our time doing that. Where does this movie fall for you in Spielberg's filmography? Would it be towards the top, middle, bottom?
Yeah, so based on the things that I've seen, it's middle.
Okay.
I don't know in terms of star rating. I probably would say 3.5.
Okay.
And for me that's like 3. Anything above the 3 really is like I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Like 2.5 is like 2 is I didn't like it a lot. 1 is get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for 3.5 is probably what I'd give it. I think there were things that I enjoyed, and the main thing that I enjoyed is just seeing where it drew from other things, and other things probably drew from it.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, it's definitely like it definitely has some influence in the way like it probably is designed and look like. I mean, the whole like washed out like lens flares and overexposure and stuff, like it seems like there's a lot of stuff after this that kind of like pulls from that aesthetic. I even mentioned the show Fringe earlier, and it kind of does some of that aesthetic in that show, which is funny. But for me, I honestly like that. So I have it as like a 4-star. I really, really enjoyed it, but I wanted to give it like 4.5 or 5, and it just. It was just one of those things where I was like, man, if it just would have done these few things, I feel like I would have like given it 5 stars and had it as one of my favorites. But it's just below that tier for me. It's like maybe in the second tier of his movies for me. So
yeah,
there's like a top tier with like Jaws and Schindler's List and E.T. and Jurassic Park. And then there's like
those feel like just tighter narratively and visually. Like the thing that I liked about this really was the narrative and like the discussion we're having right now, like the whole idea of their
a sci-fi
deification
is what sci-fi is for, for these discussions.
Right.
So
I enjoyed that aspect of it. But yeah, that's why I kind of just landed in the 3.5.
Yeah.
And that's why I would say things like Jurassic Park and Jaws are better, because they not only provide that spectacle and things to talk about with the weightiness of, the things they discuss in those movies, it's also just tighter narratively and visually.
Yeah. This is kind of ending up. So I have Last Crusade up there too, right behind like Jurassic Park and E.T., because I love The Last Crusade. But then I have this tier of like sci-fi Spielberg at like in my 6 to 7 spot, 6 to 8 in my ranking, my like list rankings, which I always put those, if you're listening, in the episode description, the link to my Letterboxd ranked list. I have this tier of it's almost like a Spielberg sci-fi tier with AI, Close Encounters, and Minority Report. And I could easily switch any of those around at any point. That's why I feel like it's a tier, because like I don't know, I could say maybe I like Minority Report more than AI and Close Encounters, or maybe I do like AI more, or maybe I do like Close Encounters more. It's just like any given day those could switch, I feel like. But it's like this tier of Spielberg sci-fi movies that I really, really enjoy. So yeah, there's really only one more. I guess Ready Player One technically wouldn't be in that category, but War of the Worlds is definitely fits. So I'm really excited to revisit that one in a few episodes from now. So but yeah, that's really all we have for this week for Minority Report. As I mentioned, next week Andrew's going to join me again. We're going to do a Tom Cruise performances drafting his performances, not the movie. So it could be a bad movie, but a great Tom Cruise performance.
Okay, yeah.
That doesn't happen that often, but it happens. I've taken
standout performance by Tom Cruise in a horrible movie.
I've seen great performances in bad movies, so it can happen. And then, of course, a week after that, we'll be jumping into Catch Me If You Can, which was his next movie. So, man, he did Tom Cruise and Leo back to back. Yeah, gotta love it. But yeah, Andrew, I always make sure to link to your Letterboxd if people want to follow you there. Is there anywhere else, or is that the place to go follow you?
Yeah, that's the place. I don't do a whole lot on social media.
Yeah. So I'll make sure to link your Letterboxd in the episode description so people can find it, and you can probably also just search Andrew Fossier and you'll probably come up. But yeah, that's really all we have this week. So until next time, I've been Eli Price, and for Andrew Fossier, you've been listening to The Establishing Shot. We'll see you next time.
We were happy here. For a little while.
But look, I figure it this way. Better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime.